It's Balance with Boots. Hey Boots,
Balance with Boots. Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Is that our theme tune now? Balance with Boots. Hello. I should do that.
Sounds good. It's got to be a little more intricate than that, I think.
No. Everyone goes more intricate. I think that's a nice, simple, short, sweet, snappy thing that will
fine.
Get people immediately on the edge of their seats. It'll be like a slap across the cheek. They're like, "Whoa,
that's right.
I'm on YouTube now, and I'm watching."
Balance with Boots.
Hello. So basically, guys, a big patch just came out with Winter's Day, and I'm seeing that the secret lair of the snowmen apparently has been added, which I'm very giddy about. However, also Balance has arrived. The last patch we saw was just before Halloween, right, Boots?
Mm-hmm. Well, except for the sigil changes.
I think that was
or
before.
Unless those were the sigil changes.
We also had that bonus Balance with Boots where there were like 5 or 6 changes, and we got like 40 minutes of discussion out of it. That was pretty cool as well.
Yep.
So,
but yeah, it's now time for another balance that they gave to me on my birthday. So hopefully it's a present. And
no, I forgot. You can't just say that in the middle of the video. I forgot.
What do you mean I can't just say that?
You did that on purpose. Listen, everyone. Last night, Boots and I were like, "Shall we record?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's gonna be my birthday as well." And I said, "Happy birthday," because I'm guaranteed to forget. And I did forget, all right, but I've covered myself because of yesterday, all right. So it's all good. Seriously though, happy birthday. Let me ask: have they given you a nice birthday present with this balance, or from what you've seen so far, a bad present? Is it a lump of coal? Are you happy?
Well, I haven't seen half of the classes yet. I'm waiting for you to tell me about them, but so far, comme ci comme ça. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's so much a present as it is just interesting. Not that nothing has been crazy interesting, but there's been a few shocking things so far.
Okay, I've been shocked a lot from the half of the professions I've seen, and I see a lot of power creep. And power creep is fun, and power creep is not fun. So, you know, we'll see how that goes. So Boots and I did skip over. So this is the devs. This release have returned to describing their intent before,
which is good.
Which is good. I was thinking about the other day though the fact they stopped, and I was wondering if there was some merit to that in that. You know, they just completely close all doors of communication so that the community doesn't try to scrutinize them. Since the community has a way, and I mean no offense to anyone who will inevitably type in the comments of this video, most comments you see and most discussion you find is waffle and like pretty biased and pretty, you know, not well considered, I tend to find, and God knows what the balance devs must feel. So why not just not explain their intent at all? Just keep all the doors closed and never explain themselves. And maybe that has some merit, but they've gone back to actually talking and being open. So yeah, they open with a general description, and neither Boots or I have read this yet, so let's do it now. They say, following up on the previous balance release, we're continuing to update weapon traits to offer more meaningful options where players are not using the related weapons, while also enhancing those weapons' playstyles if the player is using them. In particular, we updated a fair amount of warrior weapon traits and a few remaining traits in other professions. I didn't actually see that. Did you see that?
I did see that. Yeah, I saw that a lot.
Oh, my half never had that, I don't think.
Yeah, I have an opinion about that, but we'll get to that later.
Okay.
And then, okay, so I'll continue, I guess. This update reworks all traits that react automatically to incoming control effects by applying control effects on the attacker, like that Mesmer thing. Traits that immediately punish players for successfully landing their skills, particularly when they're not very visible, teach the wrong things. The reworked traits are intended to encourage more active play and to provide new opportunities for the defender without outright punishing the attacker. That makes sense.
This has lost me. Can you give me an example of what they're talking about?
Well, I didn't. You did the Mesmer thing, but yeah. I assume that that trait that says when you have an incoming condition, CC, it goes back to the attacker?
Yeah, there's a Mesmer trait called Mirror of Anguish that has changed this patch. It used to be if you blow out the Mesmer, then it flips back to you, right? It was one of those passives that people don't really like. You know, passive and defensive at the same time. Obviously, all traits are passive trees, essentially, right?
Yeah, and there's something in NG that also changed that. It wasn't quite turning it back on the attacker, but it's still pretty strong.
Renegade's got something a little bit like that as well, which is when you stun break, it flips a CC onto people around you, but it's not quite the same. All right, well,
Yeah.
I guess we'll see. I haven't seen much of that. Next, they say, in addition to crowd control trait reworks, this update also addresses traits that deal instant damage and how they affect the game. Now, this I've seen a lot of, Boots.
Me too, yeah.
The large majority of these traits have had their base damage increased while
Really?
removing their ability to crit in order to improve pacing and reduce time to kill in the competitive game mode. Now, just that, if we isolate that little bit there, they want to reduce time to kill in competitive modes. I couldn't agree more. The game is extremely bursty, extremely deadly at the moment. Both sustain and offense are power crept in kind of bizarre ways in tandem right now because they had to be. But it's left, we won't get into a massive discussion about it. The devs go on and say certain traits that serve as the main source of a build's damage in both PvE and competitive modes have been modified so that they require critical hits to deal maximum damage, giving conditions like weakness more value.
Yeah, I saw that too, but I'm not entirely sold on what they did with that.
Interesting. Okay, well, we have to take a break here anyway because my client has crashed, and I
Oh no.
don't know what I'm going to do for footage. All right, so guys, in game, I'm crashing a lot on this episode of the series. I think it's the new patch, but we want to put it up as quickly as possible. So you're probably not going to see gameplay on this one. I'll have the relevant text information there. But oh, we'll see. It started up again now. I don't know. It like freezes for long periods of time. It's not going to work because it's going to.
We're gonna give it a shot. Give it a shot.
All right, I'll keep recording, but let me do a disclaimer. For the rest of this long video, you will still see relevant stuff. I'll put the text on the screen that we're discussing, but the in-game visuals, unfortunately, are going to be missing because the patch seems a bit buggy right now with how it's interacting with my client. Kind of sucks, but we want the video up really fast, so yeah, that's how we'll have to go.
So getting back to the blurb at the top, we're making changes to encourage more variety in boon-based support builds. To start, we are opening up select skills for different professions that will allow them to share boons directly with up to 10 allies. In addition, we'll be reducing which boons Mesmers and their specializations can apply, since Necromancer is currently stifling other options due to its ability to easily apply all boons with Signet of Inspiration. I mean, yes, but that's not the only reason. Anyway, our goal here is to give value to other professions and specializations by making them all adept at applying specific boons to their allies so that multiple professions are needed in order to cover all boons. In theory, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I love that on paper. What they just described is excellent. It should be a situation where it's like, druids are really good at regeneration, warriors are really good at might, X is good at Y, and it goes along like that. And obviously there can be multiples and stuff. It doesn't have to be as hard and fast and binary as I just described. But yeah, that's really smart to me. Now, I have covered Mesmer so I'll tell you what they've done with Mesmer, and you can see what they're going for. But have you seen anything that shows a single class is like dominant over a single boon kind of thing? Have you seen any?
No, but in one of my things, they are trying to enhance
Interesting.
a class in order to do that.
You've got the only one then that I know because I haven't seen any others. So yeah.
Well, I assume in yours they were nerfing Mesmer a bit.
Yeah, well, there are some reshuffles. There's always a big reshuffle for Mesmer, guys. So strap in for that one. Yeah, I think that's about it. I really like everything that they said up there. Honestly.
Yeah, me too.
There's nothing that fundamentally I'm like, you guys have got the wrong idea.
Let's see how they apply it.
Yeah, so first, a very quick general change before we get into Elementalist at the start here. Plasma. So this is the ability that you get. Well, it's called Consume Plasma. I don't know whether it's actually referring to two separate things here. But thieves stealing from Mesmers in competitive modes get Plasma. And it gives them all boons when they eat it at various durations. There's also Plasma that you get from forage as a ranger, which has always been a weird niche thing in the game until recently when Boon Beast has become extremely meta and juggling tons of boons around by bouncing via quickness and stuff has been kind of mental. So I don't know whether both have been nerfed here according to the patch notes, but they say that it's been split. In PvE and whatnot, it'll be the same, but for PvP, the protection you get is dropping from 10 to 4 seconds, so less than half, which is good, and the stability from 5 to 2, less than half, which is good. Plasma is lovely and wonderful, but I think it is too
It
much.
shouldn't be game breaking. Yeah.
And if you like, and I know thieves will be upset about that in a way, but to me, there's a certain degree of parity that should exist between stealing from all professions. And right now, stealing from Mesmers is just so wildly better than stealing from anything else, you know. And then there's certain
Does
other
this
really
apply
strong
to
ones, but-
pigs?
Sorry?
Does this apply to the pig stuff?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Does it apply to
Yeah.
everything at once? I hope so, because that would be a much needed change as well. Not everything needed, but a good change and a good start to some Boon Beast things at the same time. I'd like it to be all of it, but I guess we'll see. All right, so yeah, Ellie. Now we've both looked at Ellie. Do you want to go through the list and see what we think?
Absolutely. Should I read it off?
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay, so in this update, there have been some modifications to Tempest overloads to allow for 10 target applications to select boons. Yeah. We've also made some quality of life changes for the Scepter weapon, as always. And most of the instant damage traits have been standardized so that they do not critically hit, but Electric Discharge will retain its full damage capability when it critically hits a foe. That's not entirely true. Let's get into it.
All right. Wait. So the 10 target thing with Tempest, we're obviously going to see the tooltips in a second. But doesn't that it's a nice idea, obviously going to 10 targets and stuff, and the idea of offering that support. But isn't really the main takeaway of that you can do 10 target protection? And this is like kind of the exclusive thing we haven't seen. No one else can do 10 target protection, can they? I mean, outside of the signet sharing with Chrono.
I think so. Yeah, someone can. But I think that is a huge thing. But also 10 target. I feel like this will play very nicely into a Elementalist, based on some of the other changes on here, probably a Condi Tempest, being able to provide all of the might needed for the raid.
That's
and
cool.
Probably, and all of the fury as well.
Do you remember being giddily excited with me about the heatsink changes as well last time?
Yeah.
Because they went up
and
to
it
10.
never really got applied properly. But now it will. I think. Well, I mean, I don't know if anybody's going to use it, but a Tempest Elementalist would definitely be able to do this.
The Overload Water regen sounds kind of cool for 10 targets, but the thing is, if you were running a staff, you were already splashing amazing amounts of regen anyway. That was kind of overlapping a lot, I think. Anyway, it is a cool thing to see for Tempest, definitely, and brings it up into 2K18. But they've done an assortment of other things. Do you want to go through the actual tooltips here now?
Sure, yeah. So we got Dragon's Tooth. The casting time of this skill has been reduced from 1.25 seconds to only 0.75 seconds. That's a huge buff, actually.
Yes. Wait, the casting time... So they've dropped it down, right?
Yeah, they dropped it down by almost half.
Weirdly, I don't really remember the skill feeling like it has a long cast on creating the Phoenix. Most of the cast time, if you will, is actually baked into the travel time of it going to the right place.
But in that case, it doesn't travel, though. It comes down from up top. The question is, does this mean that the thing coming down from up top is faster as well?
Yeah, I kind of want to check it out. People won't be able to see the footage, but yeah, maybe I can have a little bit of a look at that. They've also done another Scepter buff here with Phoenix, right?
Yeah,
which is a big flat damage hitter, and always really has felt like a big flat damage hitter. But now this skill applies.
They've attacked on 1 stack of burning for 6 seconds.
Yeah, to enemies struck by its area. And the fact it says it's area attack there, guys, means it's not going to be like the other way you play with Phoenix, which is you cast it just behind your target and you do a bit of damage as it travels through them, then it explodes and you do damage, then it comes back. I don't think you'll be able to get 3 burn or like 7 burn by tricking it on a slope or something. It's just going to be 1 burn, because I think what they're basically saying is it's the explosion that does it,
That's my understanding, yeah.
But I do actually kind of like this. It might seem really arbitrary and stupid because, we think of Scepter as such a power-oriented thing in a lot of ways, but it's actually not a bad Condi weapon, and it's not all the way there, but adding Condi onto skills that are currently useless for Condi is a good thing to do. It's closer than most people appreciate, and this goes a bit further with it. So yeah, only 1 burn. Maybe if it was 2... It'd be a bit more exciting.
So I just tried Dragon's Tooth, and it looks like the travel, once it gets created and smashes down, that thing does not go faster. But the casting time does feel a little bit better now.
This was a weird one as well, because you could cancel cast it in weird ways. I think there was a weird thing where if you cast it in front of you, turned around, and faced in the opposite direction, the animation would play and everything, but it would always whiff. It would always dud out because it would register as no line of sight because you're not looking at it.
Yeah.
Really silly.
Yeah,
Anyway, it's kind of a nice buff to get that because you might be able to cleave a body slightly quicker now. Might be able to.
Yeah.
Have to play with it.
Yeah, it might just be to improve the damage for a Griever build or something for an Elementalist now.
Yeah, definitely. We got Ice Spike, so this is Staff Water 2. The skill now strikes first before applying vulnerability, which means in the past
it won't be extra damage.
Yeah, the vuln that you applied would buff the damage. So why have they reversed this? We can't really tell, can we? Maybe it's just for clarity, Boots, so that people, what it says on the tin is what you get when you're reading the damage tooltip kind of thing.
Maybe there was some weird interaction that was doing something that I don't know about.
Yeah, like we mentioned before when we were talking about it before the video, there's a trait that is do more damage to vulnerable foes in water, which means now you don't automatically get the Ice Spike synergy. But was anyone really abusing that? Like what? I don't know. So there it is. Ice Spike, you remember, only just this year became a blast and is now infinitely more fun on like support builds. When I run a support Tempest in raids and stuff on the stuff, I love casting that Ice Spike now in all the water fields. I couldn't really care less about the vulnerability. Anyway, you got a sword change here as well. I really thought there'd be some more sword changes.
They did a lot last time.
Dagger seems to have been a focus as well for them. And it's not been enough. They've kept doing it, and now I wonder whether that gravy train's ended. I was excited to see more Dagger. I don't think we see really any Dagger this release. Here's the one sword change. Riptide fixed a bug that allowed the skill to go on full cooldown when interrupted before any benefit was gained.
Good.
So, yeah. All right, then we got the overloads. What do you want to read these out? What do you think here, then?
Sure. Okay, so all the overloads have gone from 5 targets to 10 targets.
Yeah.
Now the question is this enemies and players or just players?
Wow, that's a good point.
Allies.
Good point. So you can overload fire on 10 people?
I don't know.
That's kind of cool. For World versus World, that'd be interesting, certainly. Also, there is sneakily in there, the overload water applies vigor when you finish it as well now, so
that's nice.
That vigor presumably will also be 10 targets, and there is a beautiful Tempest trait that got added with Heart of Thorns when Tempest was released and has never been touched ever, and that is when you apply vigor, you give people flat dodge as well at the same time. You give them like a fifth of a dodge just instantly every time you put vigor out, and you can spam that with auras and with shouts and stuff, and now you get it on 10 targets on overload water at the same time. So I kind of like that makes that trait a little bit better again.
So I'm checking something real quick because I'm not so sure what's going on here, because the overload fire tool thing here says fixed a bug in which the skill hit fewer times than intended when the Elementalist was affected by quickness, which first of all is great because that means you're going to be at your full overload fire now, but it doesn't say anything about increasing the number of targets the skill affects. Did it already affect 10 targets before, or
I don't know.
Is it just they missed it, they forgot to put it in the note here?
They might have forgotten it on the note. I really couldn't tell you. I'm not sure.
So now I'm actually checking Tempest, and I'm hovering over the tooltips, and it still says for earth, air, and water, for some reason it still says number of targets 5 instead of 10. And I'm in PvP, that might be the reason.
Well, it doesn't say that it's a PvE and World versus World only change, does it? They would usually it could be a small tooltip thing. They often make these mistakes. There is an overhanging tooltip mistake that you guys may remember from previous episodes that we may have a resolution for today, huh?
Oh no, here we go. Number of allied targets 10. Okay.
All right. Oh, really?
Yeah,
so wait, you're telling me it's game mode dependent?
No, it's not. It wasn't the overload. That was the switch attunements.
Oh, okay. I see.
But you know what? It doesn't say number of allied targets 10 on overload fire for some reason.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at a second ago. Well, look, let's not linger on it too long. The other thing is that overload fire, apparently while you had quickness, was hitting fewer times than intended in the past. I don't know how regularly that happened. I'd never heard of it. You'd think you would have with something as prominent as that. The
Yeah.
length of time we spent overloading fire in raids and stuff. Maybe it was only recently introduced, but there you have it. Next on the list, you got Arcane Precision. So this is the Arcane trait that means, depending on the attunement you're in, you crit and you deliver conditions.
A condition.
Right?
Yeah.
So
and now they've increased the burning from 1 second to 1.5 seconds. That's a very small change. I don't know why they did that specifically.
oh yeah, that is it, isn't it? I thought it was going to be a little bit more. You know what?
No.
What's really meaningful about this is actually air, because it gives you weakness, and weakness equals extra crit chance if you're a weaver, and obviously weakness is just really powerful. Like, that's the most prominent thing. Another half a second on the burn.
That would be, but I mean, I guess it's just a small increase to Condielli, so that's nice. But there's a 3-second internal cooldown on this trait, so it's not like spectacular.
Yeah, even with you boosting, we're really talking about we're splitting peanuts here, guys. It's not a very big thing.
I guess it's trying to say that if you have 100% condition duration, just this trait alone will have you give a burn stack forever on someone.
Yeah,
Fine.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe they wanted to
Anyway.
standardize it. You got Ether Renewal next. This skill now removes conditions before each pulse. I love this. That's the obvious thing there. It's most relevant when it comes to poison. If you're poisoned, that's going to diminish your incoming heals. In the past, you'd get the heal tick, then the poison would go away, but the heal tick would have already been diminished. Now the reverse is true. You get rid of the poison first, and you get the bigger heals,
full heal.
which is brilliant. Love it.
So now we come to the critical chance weird things that they change. So here we have Earth and Blast. When you switch to Earth Attunement with this trait, you did a burst of damage and it could crit, but now it can't crit, but the damage has been increased by 20%. Obviously, that's a little bit of a nerf, and they said that they wanted that, I guess. So yeah, it's a bit of a nerf because, you know, even though the damage is increased by 20%, your crits would be bigger than that normally if you're going for crit anyway.
Yeah, my brain is moving too slow. I seem to remember there was something like this that happened with the game a long time ago. Something that was critting, and then they said, no, it can't anymore. Oh, I think I remember, actually. The old Hydromancy sigil used to be able to crit, and they got rid of it. You know, there's little situations like that have come up in the past.
I used to use that for my burst build, and
I guess what the devs are basically saying is they want that for traits as well. So really, this is going to come up a lot this release, guys. And it's whenever you can think of a trait that is like a skill doing damage, that's the best way I can describe it. That's probably no longer allowed to crit. There are a couple of special exceptions though, and Ellie has
like this next one.
Yeah, Ellie has them. So for Earth, it's Earth and Blast. For fire, it's Sunspot. That can't crit anymore. For air, it's Electric Discharge. And that is the really, that's a keystone of an entire Elementalist playstyle in World versus World PvP, even PvE. That's Electric Discharge that zaps people with lightning. So what have they done on this one?
Yeah, and so with air is all about getting critical hits, right? So it doesn't make sense to make it unable to crit foes.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense too. Yeah.
Yeah, so they kept the crits in. They increased the critical damage of that trait by 100%, so that you think that's a buff, but no, they reduced the base damage of the trait by 50%.
All right,
so what that means
let me hold
is-
you there, okay? Let me see if my monkey brain can figure this out. It now crits for double what it used to, because it's 100% increase, but...
I don't know if that's entirely
Well,
true.
but that's what it says by 100, right? You've just
right,
doubled it.
Right,
Wait.
your base... But hold on, your base... Anyway,
Yeah. So, but the base is now half. So my monkey brain leads me to believe that is the same damage if you're critting now, but it's worse if you're not critting. Which would mean overall it's a bit of a nerf because you're not always at 100% crit.
So if you were right about your first preposition there, you would be correct.
Okay, so it's not double? What?
Well, I assume that it's not doubled. I assume what they mean by the critical damage of this trait has been increased by 100% doesn't mean that, let's say you have 180% crit damage. Yeah. You now have 360% crit damage. I think it means if you had 180% crit damage, you now have 280% crit damage.
Oh, they've increased. Okay, I see. I see what you're saying. Right.
Yeah. So this, if it was yours, that would be like that. That if you don't crit, it's 50% worse than it used to be, and if you do crit, it's exactly the same. But in reality, it's just a full-on nerf, because if you don't
Wow.
crit, it's 50% than it used to be, and if you do crit, it is slightly better than it was before, but still less than it was. Sorry, it's slightly better crit damage technically than it was before, but less full damage no matter what than it was before, because your base crit chance is 150%, which means that having 100% increased crit damage brings it to 250, which is not double. It's never double.
Okay. I have a deep-seated loathing for this mathematical minutiae, Boots. I'm very glad we can have you on to get through it each time.
Well, you might be right. Maybe it is double your crit damage. We'll have to do some tests, but I just assume that it's just plus 100.
Well, even in my best-case scenario there, it was essentially a bit of a nerf, and... more realistically, it might be an even more significant one there. And I will just hold the phone there for a second and say that would really bums me out, because FA has been... I know it can be a little bit difficult to fight against, and you really have to understand how to obstruct and line of sight and do certain things. I know it's a little bit frustrating to see the animations and whatnot, but it has been kicked in the face, in the balls, and in the back. And now it's down on the floor, and the devs are just stamping on it. I don't like it very much.
And not only that, okay, so think about it this way. So increased by 100%, great. This means that the more you build into critical damage in this for this build, let's say you bring it from 150 to 200 and something, the more the benefits of this 100% increase of critical damage gets reduced, because...
proportionally,
proportionally. So it's kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah. Well, so there you go. This is all just first impressions, obviously, as it always is. You guys can let us know how it feels. I'll definitely be playing a few queues and seeing what's in store. Last but not least, there was a bit of a change to Tempest Defense. The trait is now renamed. So let's just be very clear about what Tempest Defense was before. Okay, it was when you get CC'd, automatically give yourself a shocking aura. And rolled into it, it was do 10%? I can't remember what the eventual state was. Wasn't it 10%?
It used to be 20%. Now I think it's 10%.
Yeah.
Or it was 10%.
Yeah, and then it was get a shocking aura automatically, and it was also do 10% more damage to someone who's stunned or CC'd or whatever, right? Nice trait, and obviously has had significant impact on PvE. I like that I say impact there, very much like the impact sigil, which any class obviously could get. So, you know, if you could get through these bursty break bars, if it was like keep construct, and that the encounters really around those kinds of phases, really nice thing. Fractals, where you could maintain high CC and stuff, and there weren't break bars in the first place on trash mobs. And essentially a bit of a controversial trait as well, depending on whose camp you're in. Well, it's now called Storm Soul, and they say its functionality's changed, but it hasn't much. It now grants 10% increased damage against foes affected by control effects.
Just like before.
So that's which was the point of contention for people. And it increases outgoing stuns by 33%.
Duration, okay.
Yeah. So there is actually a PvP sigil that does exactly this, just a little bit weaker. So I'm wondering if you can take the two of them together. I think it's called compounding.
I hope they stack, because last time I checked, there's a lot of things that don't stack like this.
Yeah, there's not. You know, the new speed runes buff swiftness efficacy. Weaver has a trait that buffs swiftness efficacy, and I would love it if both work together. They don't both work together, right? And it goes up to a cap.
No.
As you know, that you can argue that's because that's what movement speed's always been like in this franchise. But anyway,
yeah. But at the same time, stuns. What is there a cap on stun duration that we don't know about? Because I know Mesmer runes, the day's duration increase, and then there is the Ranger. If you use
Moment of
Mesmer
Clarity
runes with the Ranger abilities, they didn't work together either. It didn't increase the stun. I mean the days.
Well.
So
what this functionally means, for what it's worth, is potentially that whining I just did about fresh air. There's a really important Weaver fresh air skill called Earthen Synergy, which is a stun, and Storm Soul might be nice for lengthening that. The thing is, it's juxtaposed with a lot of your ferocity and cooldown access, so it's really, really difficult to justify picking up Storm Soul. You're losing more to go for maybe this new toy that the devs just put in the toy box. So I'm still not convinced. I like the name of it.
Yeah, me too. If it did stack with Impact Sigil, that would be crazy, I think, a little bit, but better. It would be good if it did.
The other thing I'd like to say as well, by the way, is I'm pretty sure we're going to see Necromancer had a similar thing. I'm pretty sure most of this was about the name of the trait. They didn't like having the word Tempest on air specialization. And you're going to see later in the video, guys, Necromancers had a trait that had Reaper in it that was not in the Reaper line. It was in Death Magic, and it got a rename. And I'm wondering if they
But also,
just wanted...
why call it Tempest Defense when the trait has nothing to do with
Well,
defense
it does, because it
anymore?
had the shocking aura, if you remember. It was that...
But now it doesn't, I'm saying.
Oh, no, yeah, exactly, right. So what I think they did, what I'm trying to say is I think they wanted to change the name, and then they were like, well, now it's not defensive, so let's, swap that defensive thing, which is the last thing I'll point out about it. I actually liked having a shocking aura here. I liked the synergy of getting an extra way. You could play an aura sharer with air that was a really aggressive aura sharer that put fury and swiftness out on people, and an extra.
But this is exactly what they said in their blurb at the beginning that they didn't want to have anymore. They didn't want to have automatically affected things that apply when you land an ability against somebody that damages you in the end.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So yeah, they figured that's unintuitive, and there's an example of that changing. And there you go. That's Ellie. That's the changes. There wasn't any really substantial buffs there, so I get it if people are a bit dismayed, and you feel like Ellie's not in a very good place in your specific format. But
I'm looking towards Condi Tempest though as a thing, maybe not in PvP, but maybe in some other stuff.
It can be fun in PvP if they've got no idea what they're fighting against, because the animations are so subtle and just horrific, to be honest. Like Signet of Fire's animation is gross. The Scepter.
Well, yeah, but then you could do Condi Weaver, and that's fun.
Well, so we will see. Yeah, let's move on to the next class. Now, who wants to go first, Boots? You or I?
I could go first. I could go fast through some things.
Okay, all right. So what class have you got for us? I'm excited now because I'm moving into the unknown now, and now my ears have peaked up. What are we looking at?
Well, let's do Engineer.
Okay,
because it's next on the list.
All right, regale us. Oh, it doesn't look like a big section. All right,
it's not a big section. It's not a big section, but it's got some kind of interesting things in it.
It's fine. Here we go, NG fans. ArenaNet's got you. Let's do it.
Does it have them though? That's the question.
Oh no! I'm now remembering the start where you said you weren't even that excited. All right.
Hold on. Scrapper has received a few updates with its release, with the goal of dealing a bit more damage in the thick of battle. Final Salvo, the Gyrocentric Grandmaster trait, has been merged with the Master Tier trait, Expert Examination. Kinetic Stabilizers, a new and more opportunistic damage trait, takes its Grandmaster spot. Elixir U's Utility Belt skill was providing too much quickness, because, it got changed to giving your party quickness and a stun break, I think.
I'm so happy right now. You've got no idea my hatred for Hollows right now, mostly because of Elixir U.
Well, okay, so that now it's not quickness anymore. They replaced the quickness with super speed, but it still has the stun break.
Oh, this is so good. This is one of the things I wanted. Go on.
We also removed the auto-scaling Elixir... This is the big one here. We removed the auto-casting Elixir S from Emergency Elixir and replaced it with Elixir E, since we felt that the instant full invulnerability granted by that trait was too powerful when compared to similar traits. The new Elixir E still grants strong defense in the form of barrier with a lower cooldown, but it gives aggressors more options for counterplay.
This is amazing! This is so cool! This is brilliant.
Amazing for you, who is not an engineer.
No, but I think it's hard to say your objective if you even as an engineer player.
As an engineer, I never use Elixir. Emergency Elixir, because I did not like that. Trait. I didn't like the trait.
Well, listen, there are two schools of thought with the Elixir. Some people think it's not even that good because it just delays the inevitable. But what I'm talking about is when people actually start playing a little bit more smartly, you can kite towards the support in that Elixir S, and he can heal the hell out of you without any possible counterplay.
No, it's very, very strong.
It's all just time, letting cooldowns come back so you can quickly burst into stealth with your leap. And there's a lot that is very...
I definitely feel a little bit bad for NGs who relied on it and liked it a lot with this.
The other thing, though, is the game was in a really hideous place about 2 years ago now, where there were so many really wonky, clunky, hard stall mechanics, like 4 seconds or 5 second long signets of stone and crap. And
Yeah.
and this is the double Elixir S. All the hollows constantly on double Elixir S. I'm okay with one of them, I really am, but the double Elixir S, it just
Yeah. Well, they had they increased the cooldown on it quite.
I know,
a bit.
and I was actually, I would never have proposed that the devs go to all the effort of inventing a whole new kind of elixir that's barrier oriented. My proposal with this would simply have been to once again raise the cooldown on auto S, just
But
until the
at that point,
juxtaposition.
it's like it becomes a real trade-off of like people are like, I don't even know if I want this
Yeah,
anymore. the
good,
cooldown's so
good.
long."
It should be a
No,
trade
not
off.
good. It shouldn't be like that. Trades should be things that are like always interesting to take, not interesting, but like
You're looking.
you really don't want to trade it because the cooldown's so long.
No, I disagree. I think that in general, Guild Wars 2 has been too scared to have longer cooldowns and a lot of stuff. You should have a clear idea as you go into an engagement whether your 90 seconds or 120 seconds is up, whether you will have that double S there or not. These are things that would have been
But
good for
should
the
the
game.
long cooldown things be for automatically triggered stuff, or should it be for interesting things that you trigger yourself?
Well, I do think that long cooldowns on auto-procking stuff can feel really clunky in the end.
Yeah.
And there definitely is an argument for that, where it's like, oh, you don't want something really profound that also you're not... But I think that an auto-procking thing that's just when you hit 50% health, you can have a running timer and kind of comprehension for that in your own mind. I mean, there's other things we can talk about in terms of transparency for cooldowns on various traits, but that would kind of takes us off topic.
I think we should just get into the traits that get changed.
Overall, the devs did something really cool here, I think. Given a trait that gives a new type of elixir that's essentially the same kind of thing. It's a stall mechanic, but with enough burst and pressure around in the area. If the NG is so horrendously overextended that they have procced this and they're surrounded by the enemy team, you can burst through it. It's still a bit of pad for their support to help them out and whatnot. I think that's a really cool idea. How much barrier is it? We'll go into the actual notes now. I guess
We'll see. Yeah. Okay. So here we go. Number 1, Toxilus or you no longer gives quickness and now gives super speed for 3 seconds.
Okay.
Cleansing Burst. This skill's description has been updated to fully clarify that it removes the conditions before it heals. I guess it always did that. Expert Examination.
Hold on as well. I just want to say as well, there's a huge story in the quickness being removed on Toxilix EU there. Like a huge story. I bet people in PvE are probably a bit upset about that, and I would be too in PvE because it feels unjustified. But I guess the devs don't want dramatically different effects in different game modes, so that's why it's gone to super speed. That I mean, super speed's still pretty goddamn nice to be honest. But
and it's better for a lot of synergistic things in the for the engineer itself. It's got some nice things for Scrapper.
The thing that frustrated me with this once the Elixir use change came in, I used to like the reflect wall, and you remember when we did that balance of boots, I was actually pretty upset with that change, just because I really like the flavor of the old mechanism. But the thing that really sucks about all the quickness that the hollows can generate for themselves is I love Photon Forge. I think it's so beautiful and all the animations are so well defined and clear cut. And then quickness just comes and messes it all up for me. So there is still some there, and obviously you'll be able to drink the regular elixir, but it just won't be such obscene levels. It won't be a full quickness rotation through all your stuff in Photon Forge to then come out and quickness cast your Prime Light Beam afterwards. It will be a little bit more sense to it, and that's a big change. I just wanted to give a bit of discussion there instead of glossing over that, because I think that's just as relevant as Elixir S, definitely. All right, anyway, sorry, go on.
Expert Examination. The vulnerability and weakness of this trait applies upon disabling an enemy will now also occur when gyros are detonated.
Yeah, so this is Scrapper. I don't know what this is. Do you know this a bit more?
Well, it's essentially because they removed the Grandmaster trait that said you get super speed and applies vulnerability or something when your gyros die.
Okay.
They removed that entirely and replaced it with something else, and they put the super speed part into a master trait, and they put the gyro detonation doing vulnerability and weakness part into expert examination.
Oh, okay, cool.
So they separated into two different.
That makes sense.
Other traits.
I remember that trait. It always felt a little bit mismatched. Like it was two different things at once. All right, okay.
Yeah. So then the minor trait Impact Savant now grants 5% bonus damage when under the effects of barrier in addition to strengthening barrier.
Okay.
So it usually gives 15% extra barrier, and now it also does some damage.
Nice.
When you have barrier. So then final salvo, this trait has been renamed Kinetic Stabilizers, which is this trait grants 5 seconds of stability, 3 seconds in PvP, and 3 seconds of super speed upon disabling an enemy or activating function gyro. It also deals 10% bonus damage when the engineer has stability. So that, I think, was the same before, I want to say. No.
Wow,
Maybe
so they basically got like a 15% modifier. So the devs did say in the opening paragraph they wanted scrappers to have a bit more physical impact in team fights. Wow, okay, so when I'm a scrapper now, I can press F to trigger a res or something. And I also am getting stability too, so I can double... That's really nice because if I remember rightly, it was kind of annoying to get stab, or you had to rely on stab through a specific like trait interaction or something. And now you would be free to take this instead. And
I'm gonna go on my Engie now just to see where it competes with some other things.
That's cool.
So expert examination. Oh, no internal cooldown on expert examination, applying weakness and vulnerability to when stunning or dazing a foe, and also when gyro skills debilitate enemies.
Okay.
And then Kinetic Stabilizers is that Grandmaster. Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right. Fine. So yeah, a little more damage. 10% damage increase.
I hope that this is enough to keep bringing Scrapper up and up and up and up. They are starting to be able to hit a bit harder, particularly Scrappers that are good at utilizing Acid Bomb and being very cautious about it. And
also you have that rapid regeneration master trait for the Scrapper, which gives you quite a bit of healing actually when you have super speed and swiftness. And so this gives you a much better option to get super speed than having to detonate your gyros every time. So you could actually continuously generate super speed for yourself by disabling your foes, which I think is a great kind of playstyle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then we got Static Discharge, another annoying thing for me. Critical damage of this trait has been increased by 100%, and the base damage has been reduced by 50%.
So this is the same as Electric Discharge.
Yeah, and Static Discharge is that fun skill that I love using. Unfortunately, they nerfed it.
Yeah, I don't think that nerf was necessary, particularly.
No, because it's much more active than...
Yeah,
maybe not that much more active, but anyway,
it's just not as as defining about hollows, and I mean they obviously use it, and it's obviously a part of their pressure. But I've never really taken big offense to it, and I've always liked using it. But I mean, I have fond memories of the classic days where Static Discharge itself was the burst, back before all the power creep, and that was the big hitter, where you'd spam it out with your surprise shot as quickly as possible, and grenade barrage.
Yeah, I think they nerfed it also over the years a few times.
Yeah, possibly. I see that there's a change to thermal release valve. This is a meta slot as well. What have they done?
So in PvE only, they increased the burning stacks from 1 stack for 6 seconds to 2 stacks for 6 seconds.
Okay.
And it no longer critically hits foes in all game modes.
I can't say I have any real understanding of how often the dodges were critting. I mean, I remember when it was Minesweeper plus that, and you'd get all the synergy together, but I don't know how much I was relying on the dodge damage from the mines versus the release valve. What's important about that is obviously that events heat, and that aspect hasn't changed. So
yeah, and I do kind of... I mean, they at some point, I think... reduced either the damage or the burning stacks on vent exhaust near the beginning of Hollowsmith coming out.
Oh, okay.
But now they put it back on, I think, more burning damage, so you actually do have a Condi option kind of for your Grandmaster trait finally. Yeah, anyway.
I don't tend to think of that as very Condi, but it's...
Well, it's more Condi than damage now.
Well, no, not really. It allows you to sustain in Forge, and Forge gives you crazy damage. Also, it helps you proc heat therapy and sustain just your health.
Right. But beyond that, damage versus versus power damage versus Condi damage, that effect, it's more Condi damage than power damage.
You're just talking in terms of the raw maths, right? Or on the effect. Yeah, that's fair. And then lastly, they have the specifics of Auto S. What have they got for us?
So yeah, this new Elixir E on the self-regulating defenses the trait's been renamed to Emergency Elixir. Rather than using Elixir S, it now uses a skill called Elixir E, which grants Barrier, which is 3,000 at level 80, and Protection for 3 seconds. So I don't know if that's 3,000 before your minor trait that gives you an extra 15% kicks in, or if it's after.
Oh, you're thinking about being a scrapper that's using that.
Yeah, it's probably before because it's in a different trait line.
That's really low, man. 3,000 barrier? That's it?
Yeah, it's not great. So that would be 3,450 with the 15%. And you could have those runes that make your barrier stronger too, I think, or something like that.
All right, look, I was on board with the whole auto S nerf, right? But 3,000? I was when that was described, I was expecting that to be like your maximum capacity of barrier that you can have, i.e., half of your health, yeah, and it would last for whatever amount of time. I thought that that's a fair trade for invulnerability. I mean, Jesus, 3,000.
Yeah.
That's not enough. I mean,
So I mean, protection is nothing to laugh at. You have that build that whenever you get protection, you cleanse a condition.
But you can have protection anyway in a lot of these environments.
Purpose. Yeah. It's definitely a nerf. That's what I was saying at the get go.
Yeah.
It's a huge nerf. 40 second cooldown though. So rather than the high cooldown it was before.
Yeah.
Still maybe a bit high. And it doesn't look like taking HDH affects the cooldown of this.
Oh, are you looking at that in game? See, the devs should think about stuff like that. If they're adding a new elixir, they got to get those kinds of things in there, you know.
Yeah. On the tooltip, it doesn't change it, but maybe it does actually change it.
But yeah, you know, going all the way down from 90 seconds to 40 again, maybe that's, you know, we can think of it in a totally different light now. It's
but
just
for 3,000 barrier, it's got to be lower than that.
Or more barrier,
especially at 33% health. That's
yeah. Hold on, what is this? The threshold triggers at 33%. It's not enough, man. It's not enough.
Yeah,
I would have thought it'd be at half health or something. All right, that's just our on paper impression. Bit of a roller coaster there, actually.
Yeah. What are your other options for that? Anyway. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, your other options are not very good, actually. It's probably still the clear choice now over grant regeneration when you remove a condition, or
it's all about
recover
that
health with
it's all about backpack regenerator, and you've got to stand at range with your mortar out.
I feel like alchemy needs a full new set of master traits.
Maybe.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, so that's it for engineer.
Very cool. It was a good one, definitely. In terms of discussion and shake up and stuff, I would say so.
Yeah.
All right. I want to do. Let's do Necro, because Necro is probably my most exciting takeaway. You know, we're about that point in the video where people will probably want something really juicy. I feel like so frequently I'm getting Necro lately, Boots, and it's so cool.
It's because you keep calling it.
Yeah, so I couldn't help myself actually today, guys. While Boots and I were getting ready to meet up, I just read it straight away. I basically called dibs instantly. So there had been rumors going around, let's just leave it there, that Minion Mancy was returning to the game. Death magic was going to become the ultimate being once again. And you guys know I've been a big advocate for this for a long time. I've been very vocal about my dislike for a particular death magic grand master trait that used to be a very cool thing that summoned lots of creatures as you killed enemies, and then was gutted a while ago. It seems that they've done something cool. Let's see what the devs say. In addition to updating several Necromancer traits that deal instant damage, we've also done a pass on the Soul Reaping specialization line. The Master tier traits were especially uneven. This is what you were just saying about Alchemy Boots. Mm-hmm. With most of the power concentrated in the single trait, Vital Persistence. Spectral Mastery was removed due to how its functionality overlapped with what Spectral skills already did. And Spectral skills themselves have received several enhancements to make them better as standalone utilities. Another important change was an update to Death Nova to give it additional minion summoning support. While we still need the 30-second timer to prevent large minion armies. So the timer they're talking about there is these creatures can only exist 30 seconds before dying now. They used to exist infinitely but had health degen, and you could kind of heal them to keep them going. While we still need this to prevent large armies, we felt that the current trait could be doing more to give Necromancers the feeling of being a Minion
Absolutely.
Master. And hell yeah, it could be doing more. I love that they seem to.
Yeah, get 2 extra little minions that don't do much.
This is honestly, I'm so happy that they've done these little explanations because they're bang on with this. Last but not least, we've changed Abrasive Grit in order to address its interaction with the Rune of Sanctuary in a way that doesn't involve an internal cooldown.
Hey, there we go. Hopefully they do that properly.
So yeah, they kind of did a quick rough hot fix for the barrier application. So there was a new rune.
Hey, I scrolled down and read it, and they do exactly what I said they should do.
Well, okay, we'll get to it in a second. On the Rune of Sanctuary thing, there was an interaction I'm sure you guys have heard about, I've mentioned on several videos, where the new rune was giving barrier, and the trait for Scourge, Abrasive Grit, was proccing every single time. So you basically had infinite Condi Cleanse and infinite Might. They did a very quick patch to address it, but it involved some weird terminology and stuff, and now they've ironed out the actual that way they want it to work, okay? So let's get into the changes themselves, and I'm just going to say here with Necro, it's all power creep, really. There's so much power creep, and yes, that excites me to an extent, but I also think a lot of it's unnecessary, and I don't know. We'll see. So, starting off, Spectral Wall. This skill has been renamed Spectral Ring. It now creates a circular ring. That couldn't have sounded more sarcastic. Instead of a line.
No, it wasn't.
Its duration.
I like it.
Its duration has been split between game modes. It lasts 8 seconds in PvE, which is what it was before, and 5 in PvP and World vs. World. So it's important to note as well, they're changing the spectral trait. The spectral trait used to like lengthen the wall and stuff. I don't think that exists anymore. So it's 5 and 8. And yeah, so you actually create a ring now.
That is brilliant.
And you might be thinking it's like Ring of Warding for Guardian.
But you could place it, right?
But yeah, you can cast it wherever you want. Not 1,200 range away.
I love that.
But 900 away. So it is really cool. And I hate that I can't show you guys the footage on the video. I'm really sorry,
I'm showing
guys.
it to myself right now, and I love it.
Here, look, you can click back on the video, guys. My client hasn't crashed just for this second. Here, look. So this is...
Think of this, though. Oh, my God. Because remember the fun thing to do when you were Necro back in the day when you didn't have all this other stuff that you could do? That was to, like, place a spectral wall behind somebody and then fear them into that spectral wall.
Yeah.
And so they get an extra thing. Now... Okay, well, first of all, with the spectral ring, you could place the spectral ring so that they're directly inside of it, away from you, so they can't get to you, which is nice. But also, you could still do that thing where you place the spectral ring behind them, maybe give them a little chill or cripple, and then fear them into the spectral wall. It can't fear someone more than once every 1.5 seconds, but if they're not going so fast, and if you scare them into the spectral ring, they'll go into the ring, get feared again, continue going away from you, hit the other side of the ring, and then keep going again.
Yeah. And at that point, you flesh worm to the opposite side.
And fear them through it again. It's 8 seconds duration.
Well, you'll see as well. This is the patch for fear boots. Okay. So
I love that so much.
So anyway, Spectral, I like it too. Spectral Wall needed a little bit of something, I think. People weren't really using it, and this is definitely something. So it'd be interesting to see how fun that is to actually play with. It is quite short feeling in the duration, so you're going to want to make use of it properly. But yeah, all right, so you got that. Oh, another Spectral Walk. Look at the power creep on this, okay? So just so that everybody remembers, Spectral Walk being the skill that you activate it, you get swiftness and can move around, and then if you activate it again within a certain period of time, you zip back to where you originally were. It was actually a mechanic that was originally on Death Shroud and Death and stuff from when you went downstate in the alphas, but now is a utility skill. That's all it was. Swiftness and the ability to very quickly reposition yourself. Already was ran by people who wanted to be smart and think about where they were going and what they were doing.
It's also good for jukes sometimes.
I've literally just been recently posting some videos of me using this skill to stomp people and stuff, combining it with the flesh one. People were running this, all right? And here we get the power creep. The recharge time of the skill has been reduced by 10 seconds. Okay, cool. That's probably enough. All right, nice. I'll take that. But they go on. It now consumes one condition every 2 seconds is active. So it cleanses 6 condis.
That's huge.
Okay, and not only does it cleanse 6 condis and cool down quicker, but every condi it cleanses, it turns into life force for you.
What
4%
the
life force
hell?
per Condi.
So they remove the base life force generation from it every time you get hit.
Yeah, so, well,
Okay.
I think it was actually when you activated it, you got it or something. It was
No,
Spectral
it was
Armor. Spectral.
every time you got. That's it. So armor and spectral walk were both very similar in that they didn't do much, except one granted 8% life force whenever you're hit. I think on a cooldown, 1 per second cooldown or something like that. And spectral walk gave 2%.
Yeah, armor was
life.
the abundant one, right? If walk
Yeah,
was a component, it was mostly for repositioning. So
exactly.
that's now gone. But yeah, that's crazy, guys. It's a ton of
Yeah,
life force. It's such a good skill, and
it's
it was
great.
already
Yeah.
a good skill. So big power creep there. More power creep on the next change that I'm very happy with. This was actually something I'd wanted to see. Lich Form. The recharge time of this skill has been reduced from 180 seconds to 150. I
Hey,
wish
that's
it was a
nice.
little bit low, just a
Me
teeny weeny
too.
little bit lower, please.
Bring it down to rampage levels.
Just a little bit. I mean, it's competing with some really good other elites, frankly. If you're a
But
Reaper, Chill to the Bone is amazing. If you're Scourge, Ghastly
Yeah.
Breach is amazing. But
I do like though that it is all game modes. Rather, the rampage was not in PVE, and
that's weird,
they
man.
still haven't
That was
changed
really
it.
weird. I guess it was
Yeah,
maybe because of all the CC stuff for the Rampage that they.
maybe, but who really cares about CC that much
Well,
in PVE?
Well, break bars. Maybe they're thinking about raiding compositions and
Yeah,
stuff. I don't know.
maybe.
That's just a guess. But anyway, Lich Form. I love Lich Form. I love all the counterplay that comes from Lich Form. I love projectile mitigating the autos. I love mowering them. I think it's brilliant, and all that. A lot of that stuff faded away. A lot of people don't like the Rampage change as far as competitive modes went. But I actually really do enjoy stuff like that. I like.
I'd like
the
to see
big moments.
Liches coming up in a lot more things now. Yeah, I like Lich
And
Form. I like
just to
Lich
keep
Form.
this focused on PVE and stuff as well, I think that this is really nice for PVE. Honestly, it's those kind of big, flavorful, interesting elites should be accessible, and that's the kind of thing that I'll probably actually slot on now for fun in certain areas over some of the more boring ones.
And with the minion summoning, it's a little bit more minion masteryness.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point because no, you can't summon minions. Oh no, you can still summon minions from it.
Yeah,
The
you
minions
can.
are like explodey minions now, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're like bombers. So
They're
yeah,
kinda cool.
it's very very cool. It's called Summon Madness is the Lich skill. So Lich cooldown that was actually on my Christmas wishing list, and there it is. Next, Reaper's Protection. So this is a death magic trait. This has been renamed to Dark Defiance. It now causes Necromancers to gain protection for 3 seconds when affected by CC effects, and it causes protection that is applied to the Necromancer to reduce their incoming Condi damage by 20%. The trait to proc protection on you has a cooldown of 20 seconds. So
Okay, so this is replacing that thing that whenever you were stunned and stuff, it feared your enemy.
Yeah.
So this is again back to that paragraph at the top.
yes, so it used to be you could run, and this was boring anyway, and death magic in general is kind of boring and could have used a bit of, but this is now really, really exciting. It's like, wow, you pick this up and your Necromancer gets really tanky versus other Condis. Which is kind of what you want as a Necro. You're kind of the master of manipulating Condis. You want to get loaded up with a ton so that you can splash them back on someone with a big transfer later, you know. And, well, now when you have protection, you're going to be a bit more sturdy. I don't know whether it's enough to make me go into Death Magic very often, you know, and certainly not in PvE. I'm not sure how often I'd want to go into Death Magic. World versus World, what do you think? Is Death a more...
For this particular thing?
Because the big Condi bombs and stuff in World versus World, is that actually something people might be looking at?
I don't know if they really like the incoming condition damage 20%. Like, they'd rather have the conditions off of them than just reduce it by 20%.
Yeah, well, but... like whole rack runes and stuff still have merit, don't they? Or is that all completely fallen away at this point?
I have no clue.
Well,
honestly, no clue.
Well, you guys can let us know in the comments on that one. But yeah, so Reaper's Protection, and again, it's obviously one of those name changes where, it's a Reaper thing, but it's not in the Reaper line, so let's get rid of it.
Yeah.
Next, Abrasive Grit. So
Right.
the weird internal cooldown that they added has been removed, and it now basically is just this trait now only activates from Necromancer skills and traits that apply barrier, and it grants.
This is exactly the day the Sanctuary runes came out is the day that we figured out that it breaks Abrasive Grit, And on that day, I said, this is exactly the change that needs to be made. And they did it, finally.
So it now grants 2 stacks of might for 6 seconds every time, but only necro stuff. Next, Chill of Death. So this is the much talked about on this series of videos spite trait that when someone's below half health, you proc them with a focus 5. And it's a weak focus 5. It's a lesser Spinal Shivers. And they nerfed it recently, if you remember.
Yeah, it used to be better.
Well,
It used to be quite strong.
Well, it's a damaging trait, right? So the damage has been increased by 20% in PvE, but it will no longer be able to crit. So overall, it's a nerf, and in PvP, you don't even get the 20% buff, which is really good. So it's a further nerf, and that's actually something I'd like as well, to be honest, because I love the you guys. We've had this chat enough times. I like what's choiced there, and it's still overpowering the others. So yeah, it's slightly weaker now. Well, actually, quite a bit weaker, I guess. Now
Quite a bit weaker, yeah.
Also, the Reaper trait, the Chilling Nova, when you hit someone who's chilled, it explodes, doing more chill. The damage of that has been increased by 25% in PvE, but it will no longer crit in all game modes. So again, that's a nerf to that. Really, the thing with that trait was not the flat damage on it. It was the juggling of the chill, to keep that bouncing so that you'd get the value from your other miners that give you more good things happening with chill. So, that's kind of a thing, but
I'm not sure I like this whole idea, though, of making things not able to critical hit. I understand what they're trying to do, make traits that do damage less damagey, but what they're doing is they're making it less important to build into precision and critical damage. Like they're making it so that Condi builds would use this trait more often than power builds in some ways.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I'm scared to tackle your philosophy there, because we could go into a big discussion about it in the end. But what about the idea that quite often there's very little place for power builds that don't care about crit, but the more of this kind of stuff that comes in the game, the more of a place that stuff has. Yeah, because it wasn't crit.
But
anyway.
Why do you really want that?
Because it's build diversity. Power builds that care about crit and power builds that don't care about crit. For Guild Wars, it's pretty much
is that really build diversity though? That's just like,
yeah, because they're different flavors of doing damage, aren't they?
It's like it's kind of different flavors, but it's not.
No,
really.
It totally is. In other RPGs, there is a very distinct difference between being a high precision flat damager and a low precision flat damager, definitely. And the idea of the guy that banks a bit more on variance than the guy that doesn't. Yeah, absolutely. And Guild Wars has missed out on that. I don't actually think that that's what the devs are really doing here anyway. And, it could be a whole discussion. But, yeah. Next, we've got Death Nova.
Not sold.
Sorry?
I was just saying, I'm not sold on it.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah, Death Nova.
So next, we've got Death Nova. The time between... And this is probably one of my favorite changes. The time between the Jagged Horror summons has been reduced from 15 seconds to 3. So what this used to be, guys, was a really complicated way of saying you get 2 Jagged Horrors. That's it. That's what you got from there.
Yeah.
It was so lame. But now it's actually, okay, you can get up to 5 if you're killing things frequently. And I do like that. A maximum of 5 Jagged Horrors can be summoned at a time. Summoning a new Jagged Horror after reaching this maximum will kill the oldest one. And the change notes don't go on. I wonder whether when it kills that old one, it procs the explosion.
Yeah, probably not. But interestingly enough, recent will kill the old. Yeah, maybe it does. Maybe it does. That would be awesome. Actually, that'd be crazy.
Well, yeah. I mean, what? So you blow up a whole group at once, and you get all these little explosions as minions appear and die.
Yeah, it's like this is a huge damage boost if that's the case.
Well, no, because that would have been true under the old system as well, wouldn't it?
No, because you'd be doing damage every 15 seconds. Well, first of all, it was a 30-second lifespan of the Jagged Horrors every 15 seconds, and so you'd be doing the damage,
the replacing
burst damage.
Yeah,
every 15 seconds. But also, it's a max cap, right? You weren't replacing anything because it would die naturally before you're able to summon your new one.
Oh, they never even had that mechanic in there. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, so now the mechanic has to be added because you technically, if they didn't put this maximum of five Jagged Horrors, you could have 10 Jagged Horrors out there. but you'll be replacing them instead and having 5 Jagged Horde out there all the time. So there is a problem with replacing Jagged Horrors as because they're AI, they're gonna have to regain their focus of their guy and then walk over to them and then attack them. So having a max of 10 Jagged Horrors and continuously replacing them is actually bad for your DPS or for your attacking things. But the fact that it would kill your oldest Jagged Horror, which would do extra damage, kind of helps out in that regard.
Yeah.
And I think that's really good if that's what happens, because doing a big burst of damage every 3 seconds now because of this is great.
Yeah. I kind of want to go and try out your Scourge Boots Bad build, to be honest, because running that with a new lower cooldown Lich form, potentially, instead of the Flesh Golem, you've got your 5 like explodey guys, you get your 5 Jagged Horrors, you get... Could be really fun.
But to be fair, it's you summon a Jagged Horror when you kill a foe. How quickly are you going to be killing foes in order to really do this justice?
That's a good point as well, and that was one of the issues I had with the really aggressive nerf on it before and hard limit that they had on it before, that actually you don't get those that often. Well, it depends on your format, really. This, to me, Minion Mancy is the perfect match made in heaven for open world roaming and leveling. Right, and there's a reason you see so many people doing it. It's not because it's necessarily brain dead. It's just such a fun, like, iconic way to go through an RPG, to go through an MMO, and you can feel it building up. And
so this would be effective for open world PvE for sure, because you have a lot of mobs.
Death Nova is the cherry on top at the end, and I think it's really well implemented now.
Yeah, I feel like the only reason they added that 3-second summon recharge is so that, like, let's say you're in PvE or World vs. World and you kill somebody, and for some reason you kill another person, and or your Jagged Horror dies, and you automatically summon like 10 guys, and then 5 guys die because of it. It's like an
edge of extinction effect, essentially. That was a Guild Wars 1 mechanic. That's very, very cool. I mean, the other thing, the closest I can think of for PvE is like bombing into a group of pocket raptors. It's kind of a Necromancer's dream, and if I feel anyway, to run against a ton of pocket raptors, cast Rise and hit them all. Use your Lich summon and then blow them all up, and then Death Nova summons minions out of all of them, and you've got a nice horde for a while. That's such a cool idea, and Rise coming with the Heart of Thorns expansion at the same time. But the dream's not quite been there. Even under the new implementation, I'm not sure whether I'll really get to live that. But Death Nova's better.
Not quite sure either, but we'll see what happens. Yeah,
it's not over for Necro. There's still a lot to discuss here. Oh my god, there's a ton to discuss, actually.
There's so much.
Fear of death, right. This is the trait that increases the duration of your fears. Before this patch, it was 50% longer fears, which I will note, maybe I'm mistaken, but it was nerfed. When the game came out, I think it doubled your fears. Then they halved it. They said doubling your fears was too much. Well,
was it?
I think so. Yeah, I'm looking on the skill history now on Wiki, and I don't know if I can quite see. But anyway, they said this patch. The fear duration bonus of this trait has now been increased to 100%. So it's double. Again? Question mark. It no longer causes fear when the Necromancer is downed. That'll be one of those reactive things I guess they don't like too much. Instead, it now grants 15% life force when you inflict a foe with fear. But that effect has a 5-second internal cooldown.
That's a lot of life force.
Yeah, so when I saw... So there's a lot to talk about here. And I'm just going to skip ahead on the section because we have to do this. Do you remember Terror? They said that they buffed the hell out of it a while ago, but it wasn't. And I've been banging on about it. The tooltip changed, but it wasn't actually implemented, well, a little bit lower down in the Necro release notes for today, Terror fixed a bug in which the damage that is listed for this trait did not reflect its actual damage.
Okay.
So what and I've looked at the tooltip in game. What I think has happened with Terror this release is they've got cold feet and said, no, we don't actually like those buffs that we said we were doing, and they've said no, the tooltip is wrong. We said because they did buff it, didn't they? Well,
I believe they buffed it.
We did an episode.
They did not specify. Okay, so when they changed it, They said it no longer does more damage when you have an additional condition with you. Now it's all the same damage. It'll be all this much damage, but they didn't specify how much damage that was. So we assumed it was buffed, but in
Really?
actual fact, maybe it wasn't really buffed.
I'd have to go and look at those notes. Anyway, so basically the tooltip is now unified with damage, and the damage is the lower value, okay? But you can combo it with a double potency Fear of Death now, because you get the 100% duration on that. Also, what that's juxtaposed with, it's going to be a pick a lot of people go for. Let's talk about the life force as well. 15% life force upon fearing someone. It's a lot. It's really important that it has a 5-second ICD, because if you think about most fear effects on Necro, the Reaper, Skill 3 Fear, the Mark Fear, the Garish Pillar Fear on Scourge, they're all AoE. If you triggered that AoE, it would be just like instantly max life force just for the one skill.
Exactly.
So I did go in game and look at that. When it says ICD, it does mean AoE. They've eliminated the sense of getting AoE value out of it. And I guess there's a little bit of skill cap here. Necros are now disincentivized from chaining fears back to back in the way we described earlier, because they won't necessarily get all the life force they otherwise could. They could space them out a bit more, and it's kind of your choice. Do you want to stun lock someone for that period of time, or do you want to play the longer game and get some life force? And I like that interplay there.
Yeah. Is the fear duration bonus of 100% on top of your regular condition duration? Or is it, it'll just mean that your fear is always max?
I think it goes into your stats. I don't think it changes the skills themselves. I think it will be like the other traits that do that.
Okay, so basically you never have to, if you want to do a fear build, you don't actually have to do any condition duration.
Which is a bit of a shame, because like Necromancer runes, their tier 6 is extra fear duration. So you wouldn't be able to play a Necromancer running Fear of Death and Necromancer runes, which is like the Buildcraft dream. You wouldn't be able to do that. So if that's how it is working. But yeah, I think it will probably just cap at 100. And
so that's kind of weird.
Yeah, it means that if you're running like a Carrion or a Rabid setup where there's no expertise on your gear, it's, this is the best way to get.
But why would you do that? Because the only thing that's increased is the fear, not your other conditions.
Well, yeah, and then you run like crate runes for the bleed, and a sigil of agony, and there you go. And you just care about those condies, and I think that's healthy. Specific condi builds that do specific condies. You're right. So anyway, it's a good change, and we'll deal with the juxtapositions as well in a second. Let's keep going. Gluttony. Now, last release, you remember they changed this minor that was now you just constantly got loads of might. Remember? Anything that you did that was giving you life force was giving you might. Well, they've changed it. They say, no, look, they're silly. The might that this trait grants has been removed, and now what Gluttony does is increases the amount of life force gained from all sources instead of just from skills. Okay? So that's at the start of your soul reaping, your first minor, and it means that if you were ever getting life force, you get a bit more now. With whatever you were doing.
So like from those Reaper traits.
Yeah, or if you're staff auto attacking or whatever, if something dies near you, you're getting more life force, or all of those things, yeah. And that's very on theme with Soul Reaping the line, it's all about life force. So yeah, next you got Necromantic Corruption. Fixed a bug in which, so this is where the minions take condies from you. And this was actually a bad trait in some ways, because it could just get them killed instantly. But anyway, fixed a bug in which minions were taking condies from allies other than the Necro. I didn't know about that, but apparently that was a thing. Added a visual effect when this trait activates to indicate which minion is taking the condition. I don't know what that effect looks like, but I can't imagine it's actually that relevant to the game.
Yeah.
Next, there's a new trait, sort of, okay? Last Gasp has been removed, so that was a minor in Soul Reaping, and what that meant was when you got to half health, you automatically triggered Spectral Armor, and that was really big. Like a good Necro knowing not to overlap that with his utility skill one, getting free protection, like that was big. Necros don't get that anymore, so there have been several buffs here, but losing Last Gasp I actually adore. Because it really does mean that Necros have to be kind of careful here. Like, they're actually more vulnerable to certain spiky builds and things now. It's gone. Instead, you now have a new trait called Sinister Shroud, and that
Yeah.
reduces the recharge time of Shroud skills by 15%.
And we had that already in a master
Yeah,
trait, didn't we?
so that you used to have to pick in a master trait, which is also now gone. That master trait was called Spectral Mastery. Well, Spectral Mastery is gone and is now called Soul Barbs. I don't know who it is who's doing the Necro stuff, but have you noticed the past, 3 big balance patches? A ton of the traits get renamed and new art and all kinds of stuff. All right, so it's now Soul Barbs. Soul Barbs being the name of a badass Necro skill from Guild Wars 1, by the way. So top chumps for that. So Soul Barbs is 10% damage modifier to all attacks whenever you enter or exit Shroud for 10 seconds. So it's basically a permanent 10% modifier, extra flat damage.
Or exit. It's when you enter or exit. So yeah, it makes you want to come in and out every 10 seconds, basically.
Yeah, which if you're a Reaper, if you're a Scourge, you're already dipping in and out every 10 seconds or so, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, wow, Soul Barbs is a lot of damage there, really. And what you've lost from not being able to crit on certain passives, Soul Barbs comes along and says hello. But you have the way that this is all set up now. Obviously, you're gonna have to pay close attention to, because that's now a different juxtaposition, because you're not getting the reduced cooldown, but that's become a minor. The other,
it honestly seems that you have access to a huge amount of life force now, and really the plan of a lot of these builds maybe will be to, Reaper builds and core Necro builds, if those still exist, will be to just survive for 10 seconds while you're waiting for your life force to come back, for your Death Shroud to come back, because honestly you're always going to have enough life force to go into it seems.
One thing I did find interesting is Soul Barbs is only flat damage. Now Soul Reaping is kind of the 5th line, and usually when it comes to the 5th line, if you look at Rev, they're all about Fury and stuff, but it's when you get Fury, it's gain increased flat damage and Condi damage, because they want you to enjoy, if you're a Malix Rev or if you're a Shiro Rev, they don't care.
Right, so this doesn't help. Yeah, this doesn't help Scourges very much.
Yeah, just Condi Necros, which is funny as well, because you think, if anything, that it would lean on the Condi side for a core Necro attribute.
Yeah. What are the other options there?
Okay, so that's now competing with Vital Persistence, right? Which is slightly different from before. This is what used to give you extra vitality and lower cooldowns, but the lower cooldowns are now always there. Vital Persistence is now this. Gain a bit of vitality, and also incoming healing is increased on you.
Huh. Okay.
By 10%. 10%.
So that's including the healing you do yourself.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. So
okay.
I actually think that people who are Condi Scourges and stuff are still likely to pick this, because it means that their support from their Firebrand and stuff is worth that much more, or wherever they're leaning on that. I know that's not appropriate for all game types. And if you're not picking that, then you're going to look at Fear of Death, which is the really long fears. It doesn't matter what kind of Necro you are, getting long fears is nice. And getting life force from fearing is nice. So actually, Fear of Death might become the standard, really, because it's just so much life force. Name me a Necro build that doesn't have fear. It doesn't exist. They all have fear in some
yeah, they all have fear on their thing, for sure.
Yeah, so I think Fear of Death might be kind of the main go-to for people now, unless you're a power-oriented dude and you're looking at Soul Barbs, probably.
Right.
But yeah, so just so much reshuffling. Hopefully you guys have managed to follow through that. Just some slight little touch-ups for the Necro here at the end as well. Lastly, sorry, there is another change here. The final minor in Soul Reaping has also changed. It was Strength of Undeath, okay? Now, just to remind ourselves of what Strength of Undeath was, it increased your life force capacity, okay, but by 15%, all right? And also, it meant that when you were over half life force, you did 10% more damage. Well, that part of it's now gone, yeah? So the Soul Barbs is what you're compensating that for, if that makes sense. I've probably described this all far too terribly. Strength of Undeath. This trait has been renamed to Soul Battery. The bonus damage it was offering has been removed, which is why you pick up Soul Barbs instead, which is better, by the way, because it's always there. While the Necromancer is above the life force threshold, but the maximum life force has been increased from 15 to 20%.
How much damage? It was 10% damage with Strength of Undeath?
Yes, when you had over half life force, which if you're a Reaper, you didn't always because you were spending it to use.
Okay, because before you read that, I was gonna say, hey, that means Power Reaper now has a 10% buff.
No,
but
they've traded the 10% buff that was on a miner. Now they have to pick. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So yeah, I like the way that it's ordered now as well. The miners are really clear. It's like, okay, this one increases your life force gain. This one increases your life force pool. It's all very clear and nice and easy to understand, you know.
Sure.
And this one gives you more from reduces your shroud cooldown. So yeah, there you go. And now finally, last but not least, we got weakening shroud. That's the condition damage trait. The damage of this trait has been increased by 20% in PvE, and it will no longer be able to crit in all game modes.
Okay.
And that's it. So there you go. That's Necro.
Wow, that was huge. That was a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it was a lot of stuff, but it's exciting stuff too. So hopefully people enjoyed it.
Yeah.
All right, I guess it's your go, Boots. Let's keep the train moving.
Let's go Guardian. Let's do Guardian.
Okay, Guardian. All right.
Okay.
So this is kind of the opposite of the Necro.
In that they are diametrically opposed philosophies?
Well, yeah, thematically is what I was getting at. Is it also because this balance you're about to divulge is terrible, while the Necro was all amazing, right?
No, it's kind of interesting. All right, so Guardian. A major goal for Guardian in this update was to give it a more solid flow of Firebrand combat in raid scenarios.
Oh.
This involved reducing some cooldowns, giving more access to group quickness and fury, and allowing stability to affect a full 10 allies.
Oh, here you go. This is the boon thing, right?
This is the boon thing. Next, access to tomes have been too high and allowed for too little counterplay. To remedy this, we adjusted cooldowns in the game modes we deem problematic, which means competitive, and tweaked some traits that automatically refresh defensive virtues. Glacial Heart has had a larger rework based on adjustments made to both weapon and instant damage traits, and will now directly affect the hammer weapon itself.
Oh wow! Oh my god! You know, I've started playing a lot of Core Guard with Glacial Heart, so I'm biting my nails here.
It's changed. Okay, so starting off, we got Searing Slash, the axe auto attack 3. Burning duration of this skill has been increased from 1 second to 2 seconds per hit. I believe this is just to up the damage a bit for raids, because you don't use the third auto attack chain on a slow weapon like that often in PvE World versus World. So yeah, this is more for PvE. Burning duration increase.
You know, a lot of people have been on those axes in 2v2s and things lately.
Oh yeah, they do the full chain.
Yeah, quite often. I've been playing
Really?
Condi Firebrand recently as well, or any kind of DPS Firebrand. I was even trying the axe trait for a bit. And you definitely.
I think I'm just a bad PvPer because I rarely am able to have the patience to go through a full auto attack.
It depends very much on the scenario you're in, and you know how bursty the situation is and deadly and whatnot.
Yeah.
But if it's an attrition fight, definitely.
And then here's a good one: Symbol of Vengeance. This symbol now applies Fury for 1.5 seconds on each pult, in addition to its other effects.
Oh wow! So
that's the axe skill too.
Yeah. So the what was the other thing? What was the axe already giving?
It was already giving bleeding, I think, and vulnerability. Hold on, let me check.
The trait gave it bleed, I know that, but
bleed and cripple.
Was it? Oh, so there was no boon on it?
It did bleed. It did bleed before the trait.
Oh, okay. Was there no boon on it though? It was a symbol.
Apparently not.
I wish my game wasn't bugging and I could actually check this stuff a bit better.
Yeah, apparently it had no boon before.
Okay.
So now, or maybe it gave it just without, not on each pulse. Maybe it gave it just as a. Anyway, which is, doesn't Sword also give Fury on its symbol?
Yes, it does, right? That's the Fury one, Sword.
Okay, so now you have two options. I guess Axe will be more Condi oriented than the Sword.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, so then we got Mantra of Potence, the quickness mantra for the Firebrand, and the quickness duration of this skill has been increased from 2 to 2.5 seconds. And then the final burst has been increased from 4 to 5 seconds.
All right.
So, this is a buff to quickness like they said they would, but I don't know if they really needed that. They had enough quickness to get 100% quickness before this. But maybe they're just making it easier for people so they don't have to build too much duration into it.
I do wonder for some of the other modes, though, because I don't really feel like high quickness uptime Firebrand in other modes has been much of a thing before. This might help with that a bit.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so hard to justify running the Mantra of Potence, man.
Yeah, well, they did specify that they wanted this for raid, so I don't know
Yeah.
if they're really thinking about the other modes in this
That's
case.
fair. That's totally fair.
So then we got Stand Your Ground. The number of targets the skill affects have been increased from 5 to 10. So you got...
Jesus.
Yeah.
World
That's good for World versus World.
They are. If there's ever been a stability bot for World versus World, it's the Guardian class, and boom. If that was ever starting to waver, this patch.
So
is
I assume... I guess they want you to have this for raids. They said they give 10, they get stability for 10 people for raids. They were saying, but this is probably going to be used way more in World versus World.
Dude, I would so happily run this though, like fighting Samurog or something on an uneasy day. Just throw it up and know that everyone. One of my favorite builds ever. People are going to cringe at me saying this, but was a stupidly easy passive Phantasm Mesmer build that basically just auto attacked, but it could give the stability mantra out, and I used to love popping that before CCs, but it was always so lame because I knew I could only save half of the group. Well, check it out.
Well, that's what I like. That's the thing. I like the stability mantra for this more. For that particular thing, even though it's only half the group, but just Stand Your Ground is only 6 seconds of stability on the 30.
Well, what I'm wondering now, does Guardian get any goodies that increase their stability durations and stuff?
Good question. Let's keep going.
Okay.
I think no is the answer, but let's keep
going. All
right. Tome of Justice, the duration, the cooldown has been increased from 30 to 40 seconds in PvP and War vs. World only.
Okay.
Tome of Resolve from 40 to 50 seconds, and Tome of Courage from 50 to 75 seconds in all game modes for both of those.
Oh my god, they're not messing around with those tome cooldowns.
No, they're not. I mean, it was really low to begin with.
The thing with it though is the refreshing. You res someone and Tome of Courage comes back. But they said in the forward that they're changing that, right? So we've got half the story.
So here's the next note right here. Courageous Return. The trait no longer fully refreshes the cooldown of Virtue of Courage, and instead reduces the cooldown of Virtue's Courage by only 10 seconds for each ally who was successfully revived.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah, so you're going to have to do a lot of reviving, though.
It's kind of like when they let thieves double steal, and then they said, no, wait, maybe this was a bit stupid. And now it's like, oh, now you can almost double steal. We'll just give you half of it back. We'll just give you a bit. We'll refund a bit back. And that's what they're doing here. 10, that's a big difference as well. That's a big nerf on the cooldown. And it's not compensating. The difference between Tempest and Firebrand might have really narrowed down a bit there in terms of supports.
Maybe. Yeah.
That's
and then we get to Glacial Heart.
Okay.
Which is what you were thinking about. So this trait no longer inflicts area damage upon critically hitting a foe. Instead, it now inflicts a single strike that chills enemies for 2 seconds if they have been disabled by the Guardian, regardless of which weapon is equipped. So it doesn't even matter if you're using your hammer. So the base damage of this trait has been reduced by 50% and can no longer critically hit. Equipping this trait now modifies Mighty Blow to Glacial. This is interesting, actually. Equipping this trait now modifies Mighty Blow to Glacial Blow.
What does it look like? What's the tooltip look like?
It's not that great. But it's interesting that it affects a particular skill on a weapon.
Yeah, it's like the Necro change we had on Scepter last patch, remember? Where they've got their Grandmaster that gives them a new skill 3. That was epic! Yeah. Is there a new tooltip and stuff?
I don't know. It might be the same, just the name. Yeah, it would definitely have a new tooltip. Yeah.
Oh, I want to see what the new Glacial Blow looks like. Damn it!
So it increases the damage of Glacial Blow by 17%.
Yeah.
And chills them for 2.5 seconds at the cost of an increased recharge time that's 6 seconds instead of 4 seconds.
Oh, there's a lot to reshuffle and readdress and think about there.
Right. So what that means, if you're using this trait, your Glacial Blow instead of Mighty Blow is now doing less damage over time, but you'll do bigger hits in whenever you land.
It's also, though, is 17% buff actually the same as, critting on a Glacial Heart proc in the past? I don't think so.
Probably not. I think overall it's a damage reduction.
Yeah, which is a shame because Greatsword was already arguably better. I say arguably, there was a discussion involved there, but I think we'll just see it. Most people over on GS now with this kind of...
you might still run this trait and use a Greatsword because you get you still get some damage when you're not using a hammer.
I think there's just better things to pick, though.
Yeah.
I
It looks
really
like
like
the
that.
hammer's going to be less used. I mean, damage-wise, it's going to be less damage.
What's this though?
Uh,
They've changed some of the other skills. Keep going. What's this other stuff?
oh, they just reduced the cooldowns of all the other skills
Including the ring of warding,
because
10 seconds. That's not bad.
it's reduce it by 10 seconds because of the fact that Glacial Heart no longer reduces the cooldown.
Oh, right.
So they made a baseline.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it changes things a lot, so we'll see how that works out. But
I really like the idea though. Traits that basically give you new skills. That is the beautiful. That's the materia system.
Yeah, it's really cool. It does seem though that Glacial Heart just became a good skill. So they made Glacial Heart a good skill for any weapon, basically.
Yeah.
Although you do have that nice little flavor of getting Glacial Blow, but and then just kind of flatline buffed the hammer, and you don't really need to use Glacial Heart with the hammer if you don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a continuation of what we saw last release with the weapons.
Okay, then we got Liberator's Vow, and this reduced the internal cooldown of this trait from 8 seconds to 7 seconds. That's the trait that gives you quickness whenever you use a heal skill.
Okay.
Lore Master, the reduction of this trait has been split between game modes and now uses 20% cooldown reduction in PvP while keeping 33% for PvE in World vs. World.
Okay, wait. So Lore Master was get extra tome pages, wasn't it? No.
No.
That's
Lore Master was reduced. It was the Grand Master, I think, reduced the cooldown of all your tomes by 33%, and the passives still work while you.
Oh
have them
yeah,
active.
that one. Right, I remember. Okay.
Yeah. Now it's a cooldown by 20% instead of 33%.
All right, that's not a major difference then.
And
Combined with the other stuff above though,
Exactly.
it's building up.
Yeah.
They're firing on all cylinders here. Oof.
And then Quickfire, same thing as Liberator's Vow. The internal cooldown of this trait has been reduced from 8 seconds to 7 seconds. That's the one that gives you extra fire damage whenever you gain quickness to allies. So they get that extra fire buff. Now, they reduced the cooldown of these things from 8 seconds to 7 seconds. It makes me wonder if they were doing internal testing. Same thing with Stalwart Speed, which gives quickness to allies whenever you give them Aegis. Or stability, I think, and that's from 8 seconds to 7 seconds. So it makes me wonder if they did a lot of testing and found out that it should be 7 seconds to make a really nice rotation. But at the same time, I'm not so sure if that's the case because your mantras are still on I guess 9-point-something second internal cooldown with that trait, or even more, 12-second internal cooldown without the trait. In between uses. So I don't know. Are you going to be casting these things every 7 seconds? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know. The only thing I can think of is 7 seconds lines up with weapon swaps. So maybe they want that as some kind of standard. I don't know beyond that though.
Maybe. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see how all this works out in raid rotations because it's obvious that you will now be able to get a lot more quickness for your friends, and you have been able to before get 100% quickness, but now it's going to be even easier, and maybe people will be using Quickfire more. But then Shattered Aegis, the damage of this trait has been increased by 20% in PvE only and can no longer critically hit.
Right, so Shattered Aegis was do damage when people proc Aegis?
Yeah, so whenever Aegis you grant to anybody gets used, it does damage.
Yeah, it does that Mystic Rebuke, it's called. I'm on Wiki here, and it's got that weird image of a Guild Wars 1 Dervish skill, I think it is. All right,
yeah.
No longer crit.
I think people were using that actually for some World versus World builds, and this is a bit of a nerf to that.
Okay. Everyone's getting it. Everyone's got it so far, that aspect of this patch. Something has been hit.
Yeah. And then finally, last two things. Unbroken Lines, the cooldown has been increased for PvP only. That's the trait, I think. No, wait. Unbroken Lines is the tome 5. Right?
Yeah, F3 skill 5, really, really powerful. Gives everyone tons of toughness and protection and all the big stuff, basically. Great before a team fight and stuff. They've really hit the tomes hard. They
have hit the tomes very hard. Including the last one, Chapter 1, Unflinching Charge. That's Tome 3, Skill 1. The stability is now 4 seconds in PvE in World vs. World, but is reduced to 2 seconds in PvP.
See, all I think that I agree in some sense that Firebrand's a little bit too dominant, but the thing I would have changed about it actually is F1. I think that the supportive kind of Mendes Firebrands were basically just able to contribute DPS wise a bit too much, and I would have reined that in because that's where Scrapper and Tempest and a lot of others kind of can't compete. The Firebrands
they
on
did
demand.
increase the cooldown on that.
Yeah, but they've hit all this other stuff as well at the same time. I'm really scared that you hit the team fight idea too much, and you just it really makes things a bit blobby and lame and too duelist heavy, and I don't know. Anyway,
we'll see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, hopefully it's not too much, but they have hit the stuff heavy. I you know what I'd really love to see? Just a timeline of all the Firebrand nerfs since POF came out, because I think Firebrand, beyond all others, without a shadow of a doubt, has been ripped and torn at since and quite rightly so, I'll add as well.
Quite rightly so. It was very, very strong.
Obscene release. I mean, obviously that sells boxes for the expansion to some extent, right? And it's the most exciting thing to release something super OP. But it is just, oh my god, they've managed to get through a couple of patches without being touched too much, but most of them, they're going down.
I mean, there was a good amount of time. Like, I kind of just liked where Firebrands were for the last few months. I didn't feel like they needed to be hit to this hard, I don't think.
Well, there's two discussions. One is how hard can you hit them while still maintaining the sense that it's worth team fighting with them and that it's good to run a DPS as well. That's one side. And the other side is, are they too strong in terms of muscling out other potential support builds, right? So you got to find where the two worlds meet, and we'll let the professionals try and do their job on that. So, what do we have next? I guess it's over to me again.
Yes, it is. And
it won't be as long as Necro, I'm afraid, guys. You can accuse me of being a Necro main in chat if you like this time, because we don't know about Necro. Let's do Rev. Rev was another one I was really excited about. I've been playing a lot of Rev recently. I've actually been trying competitive Renegade, believe it or not, with a short bow, believe it or not. And no, I don't think it's any good. But I've been having fun. Anyway, so I rushed to this and I wanted to see if there were any Renegade changes. Renegade's a weird one because as soon as it had efficacy value in raids, all of a sudden people thought it was okay and it was fine. Listen, just because it's runnable somewhere doesn't mean that the underlying design and mechanisms at play there are intelligent or fun or intuitive or visually well done or anything, right? So I still think that something big has to be cooking for Renegade. They haven't touched or mentioned hide nor hair of Renegade in several patches now. And what do you know? Another one here, nothing. It's like it doesn't exist to them. And there can only be one reason for that. It's because they got something bigger going on. And what's the point in doing smaller changes in the interim?
Is that the case?
That's my theory.
Okay.
So, Revenant. Since we removed the counter taunt from eye for an eye, we felt it was a good time to adjust some of the more passive traits in Retribution, like Steadfast Rejuvenation and Dwarven Battle Training. We also noticed that Heralds had been underperforming in some game modes since their rework. So we've bumped up the numbers on their F2 skills, and we've reduced the recharge time for a few of the consume skills in PvE. And it's really funny, Boots, before I started trying to play Renegade with a short bow, I was just trying to play core Condi Rev and Condi Herald. Because I love the new facet skill for Malix, transfer conditions, and the new pulsating pestilence we looked at on a recent patch. They got all this potential transferal now. Oh, what if you can do it to Mesmers and flip everything back onto their clones and, this could be really fun. But the core skills just weren't good enough. Well, the devs have buffed a lot of it right here. So let's see. First of all, Shackling Wave. The casting animation of this skill has been increased from just over half a second to a little under 1 second to allow for better counterplay. Okay. Added a visual indicator to the skill's warm-up animation.
Yeah, it's a heavy-hitting skill.
It's a huge skill, definitely. I actually think Death Strike is a huge skill too, and that's got very little of an animation on it. I'm as someone who's played a lot of Power Rev, I can see why people might be upset at the idea that there's a bit of counter here now for people to notice, but I think the game is healthier if it's a bit more interactive in terms of people being able to see it coming and stuff. So I'm actually really happy about this. Also, there's the battle of the offhands, Shield and Sword has been dumping on Shield for ages now. So a little bit of a slight nerf, if you will, to Sword that works in Shield's favor, and it gets a little bit more of a look in over time.
Yeah.
Forced engagement. So this is the taunt on Jarlis. This skill's taunt and slow durations have been increased by double, 2 seconds to 4 in PvE only. But it now also
Okay.
causes the Revenant to take 20% less damage from their taunted foes. So this is a
does that stack with that other trait?
well, this is the thing. I can't remember actually what I read. We'll see in a second. I don't think that trait's changed. Maybe it has. Maybe they got rid of that trait. But if they didn't, then you can take it together because there was already a trait that gave you that effect, basically, guys. I like the idea of having it all at once. That's some classic MMO taunt gameplay there. I'm a tank. I taunt my foes and get damage reduction. It's kind of a dream that we've never been able to live because toughness tank is the thing, not taunt tank.
Yeah. Improved aggression. Major adept.
It's still there, yeah?
It's still there. 20%.
So you get 40
can have 40.
total. That's nice.
That's great.
And this is on Rev as well, where you're on Jarlis, you can spin the hammers around, which is another 20. You've got your elite, which is another 50. You've got another passive trait. When you have retail, it's even more. It's kind of fun actually how much damage mitigation you can stack.
Yeah, but it's all multiplicative, not additive. So you're never gonna have 0% damage on you, 0 damage to you from these things stacked together. But you could get it down pretty low.
Yeah. And that's PvE only, but I like that. That's fine. Taunting should have always been much stronger in PvE. I like the idea of taunting things in PvE, and I haven't really had enough of an experience. Next, Soothing Stone. We saw a similar thing for Ellie. This skill now removes conditions before it heals. So if you're poisoned and you use the Jarlis heal to remove the poison, it will do that before healing, and you get to enjoy the higher heal. Yep. Which is nice. Burst of Strength. So this went through a change recently. It stopped being vulnerability. It's now a buff. This is the Dragon Stance skill. The cooldown of the skill has been reduced from 15 to 12, only in PvE. I'm sure that'll help with some rotational stuff. And Elemental Blast. The cooldown has been reduced from 15 to 12 in PvE. Again, I'm sure it's good for rotations.
Oh, wait, hold on a second. I'm going down into the things, and it looks like they did change improved aggression.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had a hunch.
That it hasn't changed on the wiki yet.
Yeah, that's why I staggered as I was speaking, because I thought that they changed it. All right, next. Now we got the Facet of Nature for Assassin and Centaur. If you guys aren't familiar with these, you can check out the video I did on the Herald rework. Basically, this is maintaining F2 while you're in either of those different stances. Gives you a different effect. So for Assassin, it was lifesteal for you. Well, the power multiplier on the lifesteal has been increased by 100%.
Hey.
So that is pretty valuable. That's really nice.
Yeah.
Holding that. Plus
and the base multiplier has been increased again by 35% as well.
Yeah, so you're getting more out of that F2. It's much more impactful now. And comboing it with the other channel at the same time, just from being in Shiro, love it. That's in all game modes that you get that too, but I think that's really exciting as far as PvE is concerned at the very least. There was a funny thing, if you Power Herald is something people run, is pretty meta for competitive modes, but people rarely even use the F2 before. Maybe this patch has changed that and made it really valuable now. Then you've got Centaur, so Ventari. This is
insane.
The skill's base healing per pulse has been increased from 272 to 471, over double.
And
its healing power contribution has been increased by 363%.
That is ridiculous. It was already doing a ton of healing.
So now you can be your ultimate dwarf. I actually made this. I made a dwarf on my account who uses. He's like a fat Norn that uses the miniature tonic and runs around. He's ultra tanky in Nomad's gear, and you can sustain heavy by just holding the F2. Don't forget that heals around you. By the way, doesn't it? Isn't that an AOE heal?
Yeah, it is.
It's like a splash heal. So very, 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 very strong.
Hold on a second. So yeah, it was once every 3 seconds you would heal. I guess with 1600 healing power, it would be around 500 or something like that. 500 and almost 500. So now you could get it up to times 3.63 equals plus 470. You could get like 1200 heals.
No,
every 3 seconds.
That's crazy. Really?
Yeah.
I mean, that is huge for everyone around you as well. Oh, I've got to play this, man. I wonder if you could get away with the Ventari support at the moment. Oh, I love balance patches. Okay, keeping it going. True Nature, the following changes have been made to the skill. For Legendary Assassin, so this is the activate. When you rip boons with Assassin Stance, it now delivers an attack that cannot be blocked, rather than an attack that's completely unavoidable. So now it can be dodged, actually. That's a nerf. Legendary Centaur stance. True Nature now heals for each condition that is removed, up to a maximum of 970 health per condition at level 80. So, what did that do before? Was that just a flat Condi removal?
Oh, but you also transfer them.
Yeah, so you get rid of them and you heal up.
Man, I'm looking forward to making a Centaur healer. This is crazy.
And lastly, Malix. Malix is the one I'm most excited about and want to see good changes for, but doesn't really get much this release, I'm afraid, guys. Anyway, True Nature for Malix now transfers conditions, which it already did, but it also grants 5 stacks of might for 10 seconds for every Condi that's transferred. Which it's actually quite easy to get up to 25 might there. I don't know whether if I transfer a stack of 10 bleeds,
yeah,
is that 50 might for me or is that 5 might for me?
Probably 5.
Well, you say that, but on Reaper, if I'm running Blighter's Boon and I give myself 10 might, I trigger Blighter's Boon 10 times.
Right.
It counts as 10 separate things in one stack, but it's still 10 boons. So wouldn't it be the same for Condis?
Probably not.
Well, if it is, it's amazing. If not, you can still get a lot because it's 3 transfers on 5 targets around you. You can get 25 in one transfer still.
Yeah.
So yeah, which is a shame because I've just been getting into short bow with Renegade and I can't use these core skills with that.
So I just like to point out a little extra thing. I said that 1200 heal for the Centaur stance thing, but that's before all of those modifiers that you
Benevolence,
get.
yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, continue.
Yeah. So Draconic Echo fixed a bug in which this trait could fail to activate under certain circumstances. So Draconic Echo is the one that meant your passives hit loads of people, but also when you activate a facet, it will still roll a tick or two afterwards, if that makes sense, after you consume them. Apparently that wasn't working all the time. I didn't know that bug existed. Well, they fixed that, apparently. Next, they also have Dwarven Battle Training. So this is the one that you do a bit of weakness. Weakness is less effective on you. This trait now increases Revenant's damage to weakened foes by 10% and applies weakness for 5 seconds whenever you disable a foe. So Dwarven Battle Training now does a ton of different weakness-related stuff. Like, loads of different things to do with weakness all at once. It's not even a Grandmaster. It's just like the ultimate weakness-oriented trait. Weakness doesn't mean much on you. You're splashing it out in various ways. You're doing more damage to weakened opponents. And that's easy to sustain on people now as well, by the way, because like in Invocation, you get Planar Protection, which is that dome on your heal skill, which is just perma weakness around you. So yeah, you get some more damage modifiers running Retribution.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I've been playing around recently with a warrior build, a disabling warrior build with someone mentioned this to me when I was in game to look at not apothecary runes of the aristocrat.
Yes, I was looking at I always say aristocrat. Am I wrong?
I don't know.
Okay,
you're British. Maybe
they're aristocracy anyway. That's how aristocracy. Anyway,
aristocracy. Yeah. So the aristocrat runes work really well with a warrior.
They're might on weakness, basically, guys.
Might on weakness with a 1 second internal cooldown, and it's 5 might. So that works really well with might makes right. Obviously, you get quite a bit of healing and stuff whenever you get might endurance, and it makes it a very good build. And it's a 1 second cooldown. Now it looks like here you're getting weakness whenever you disable a foe as well for this guy. So you're going to probably be able to get a nice 25 stack of might build going on with this. I don't know what other traits and stuff interact in the Revenant whenever you get a boon. I know with the Engineer you could do that now too. They have a similar trait. And they also have the Elixir Gun that does weakness on every auto attack. Yeah. So and they also they have that minor trait for alchemy that gives you a little bit of health every time you get a boon. So I kind of like aristocracy runes can be put to a lot of things nowadays, it seems, and I kind of want to try out every single one of them.
Yeah, I was trying these runes on a core necro, which might sound weird, but I was corrupting so much, and you corrupt might all the time, so you get weakness over and over and over and over and over again. And they're nice, but the might you get only lasts like a tiny amount of time, and I felt it was like spiky.
Yeah, but with might makes right, it definitely makes sense.
Yeah, so certain builds definitely. And yeah, Dwarven Battle Training may just be a new one there. Eye for an Eye, they talked about at the header. This trait now grants protection for 5 seconds whenever the Revenant is CC'd. And it grants 5 stacks of Might for 10 seconds whenever you break a stun. The protection aspect of the trait has a cooldown of 35 seconds, but the Might has none. So,
okay. Seems
stun breaking, give yourself lots of Might. I'm not actually sure I really like an Eye for an Eye as a trait, to be honest. It's a bit flavorless and not cool enough to me in a lot of ways. But hey, probably more interactive and fun than what they used to have with the the automatic counter taunt. Next,
I don't know. I think that probably I think the Revenants like that more than they'll like this.
Next, you've got improved aggression. The trait's been so improved aggression. All right. Again, we're still in retribution with all of this, right? So hopefully you guys are very familiar. Retribution is one of the lines I'm least familiar with in the entire game, I must admit. But improved aggression was gain retaliation whenever you taunt someone, increase the duration of the taunts, and people taunted do less damage to you, 20% less. So this trait doesn't exist anymore. It's been renamed Spiritual Reckoning. And Spiritual Reckoning applies 3 seconds of retaliation whenever a Revenant uses their elite, and has a 10-second cooldown. That's it.
Oh, okay. I mean, Revenants get to use their elites more often than other people, so that's...
They do, so I can see the 10-second cooldown. But it's just a bit of retail. Retail's just... I don't know how to judge retail, basically. Sometimes it's amazing, and I get, like, one shot by it, or... Most of the other time, it's just like barely there or considerable to me. But yeah, don't forget though, retail has like synergies with Renegade, if I remember rightly, where it's like if you get retail, you also get regen or something like that. There's an interaction between retail and Renegade.
There's also a Grandmaster in Retribution that says when you have retaliation, you do extra damage and gain might when you strike.
Yeah. So you could run it with that because this is quite early on. This is like Adept, right? So you got that.
Yeah.
Moving over to Malix. The only change, and unfortunately it's pretty boring, spontaneous destruction. So this is the one where if they put too many boons on themselves, you automatically rip a few. And you apply confusion. The damage aspect of that has been increased by about 33%, but it can't crit anymore. The thing is,
so this kind of makes sense.
The thing is that thing had like no damage on it anyway. Banish enchantments was like nothing. So it's basically.
But like this is like one of the places where it kind of makes sense. Like every place that they do this, where it's in a line that is power focused and damagey focused, it doesn't make sense to me. But for this one, it's a Condi line, so it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last but not least, for the Revenant, we're back to Retribution, and Retribution's getting a trait that feels a lot like a Herald trait. So if you remember, Herald's all about upkeeps and maintaining things. And when they did the Herald rework, they added like move faster the more you're maintaining and get toughness the more that you're maintaining. Well, Retribution now gets that too. Steadfast Rejuvenation. It was a trait that used to be as you got attacked, you healed a bit. I mean, they're so boring as an idea for a trait. And completely weak as well. The efficacy was just all over the shop. Well, now it regenerates health every second for every point of upkeep you are maintaining. So if you're a Herald that is running move faster while maintaining stuff and extra toughness while maintaining stuff, and you go Retribution, you can also be regenerating while maintaining stuff. So I wonder
how much it is.
Yeah, I like the idea, but I don't know how much it is. That's the thing. Hopefully it's something exciting, because I'll tell you what, Boots, running a Centaur Herald with Jarlis, you could combine with Retribution, you could combine all of those together, and you're getting Steadfast Rejuvenation heal ticks on yourself with the Facet of Nature heal ticks.
Yeah, already it was pretty good, that trait. It was like 400 healing base every 4 seconds whenever you got hit. So I don't know, is it going to be better than it was numbers wise before, or is it going to be worse? I don't know.
I'm really excited to see. It could be obnoxious to fight against, but I'm really excited to see. So there you go. That's Revenant. Nothing for the Renegade out there, but eventually, guys, I'm sure.
So with no healing power, Steadfast Rejuvenation was 68 heal per second.
Okay. What, and per pip per second?
per pip per second. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And then with a lot of healing power, with 1,000, it's 79. So it doesn't go off of healing power that strongly, actually. So I don't know if you would use this
So wait,
necessarily as
if you get like 10 pips of degen though, doesn't that mean you're getting 790 health a tick
per second? Yeah,
That's a lot, isn't it?
it is a lot. That actually is quite a bit. Just go into Embrace the Darkness on.
Oh my god,
on
with
Malix
the
or something.
centaur thing, dude, I got to try that. I've got to try that. Like
Yeah.
right after we finish recording here. All right.
Yeah, that is theoretically when you want. Not only is it stronger when you're going full out with your degens than it was before, but it's also a much more active playstyle than it was before.
Yeah.
So it's way more worthy of a Grandmaster trait than it was before, and I kind of like it that way.
Yeah. That props all. If that is how it sounds, that props Retribution as a lineup immensely for me. It almost feels quite Salvation-y, but it's also selfishly tanky, so I can see why it would be with that line. Yeah.
Let's see. I'm just gonna 645, 640. Yeah. Honestly, I was popping. That was a lot of healing. That was a lot of self healing.
Okay. All right.
All right. Okay. So Thief.
Okay.
Yeah, here we go. So when we changed Malice to no longer generate over time in an earlier update, we also carried over a portion of Death's Judgment that could not be blocked.
Oh,
However,
they changed it. Oh.
However, now that it takes a shorter amount of time to build Malice, we no longer feel that benefit is necessary. Additionally, we've toned down the initial burst damage that the Thief can apply by removing the ability to stack lead attacks when outside of combat. So that teleporting around with your short bow won't make you stronger when you enter battle. We've also had the opportunity to update Thief weapon traits to the new standard of having baseline value in addition to the benefits while wielding that weapon.
Wow. Again, everything they say there, I think the out of combat lead attacks thing is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I don't know how necessary that was. Like, isn't the whole point of Thief to be really bursty right entering combat?
I don't play enough Thief to really talk at length about how the flow of the class will feel after that. But that might justify a later buff to lead attacks, and it's something you really think about playing into. But it's something you... I've played a bit of DP a while ago, and I remember thinking about it. Anyway, the Death's Judgment stuff sounds great. I see that the top of the list says Consume Plasma, though, so we're going to get an answer on that now?
Well, that's the repeat of the skill up top. So Consume Plasma, the skill has been split between game modes. It's the same thing.
Okay.
It's
So since the devs listed it twice, I'm guessing that the plasma found from foraging and probably littered around PvE and whatnot is also nerfed. So I'm guessing it's both.
Well, I feel like it would only be nerfed if it was listed in the Ranger stuff.
Well, not necessarily, because all the foraged skill does.
Oh, you're right.
Is retrieve
you're
environmental weapons you find around.
Since it was in general and not just Thief. Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah. Anyway,
okay.
All right.
So there's that. Then we got Cluster Bomb. The projectile speed of this skill has been increased by 50%.
Wow, that sounds fun to play with.
Yeah, way better than it was before.
Damn.
It's always been pretty slow.
The slow arc on Cluster Bomb led to some fun things, though, in the past. Like, if you were really good with it. I hope that those haven't been removed.
I assume it doesn't seem like they changed it that you could detonate it. They didn't change the detonation thing.
No, I know. I just mean you can establish it at a certain arc and then move away and, proc someone from really far away.
Yeah, so people are going to have to rejigger their how they feel about Cluster Bomb nowadays. Yeah. They're going to have to relearn to play with it.
Landing a good Cluster Bomb is a big part of being a halfway decent Thief, and I think that will help a lot of people.
That's right. And then Death's Judgment, the skill can now be blocked.
Hallelujah, I want to say. Only because I didn't really play much Rifle Thief. Some of you may have felt like this was super necessary. There were other ways of going about the Deadeye issue, if you dare to call it that at the moment, to do with its stealth access. But I'm pretty happy with this too. I found so often lately, Boots, that I wanted to do things with my builds, but when it came to the matter of projectile mitigation, I always felt limp adding it or utilizing it, because the biggest and main projectile threats in the game are Sikkim Soul Beasts that are way too much unblockable access, and his Death Judgment. And it just feels like, because of those two things, it feels like a really limp aspect of the game that's been choked away somehow. And that change there, making Death Judgment blockable again, that's huge for me. I think the integrity of the way that most of the game's interacting with itself. Maybe it
And
really...
I would like to say that if for me it's not that huge, only because I don't know how this happened, but since it's got changed, I didn't realize it was unblockable this whole time.
Okay, that's brilliant.
All I know is that every time that I tried to put a shield up against a Death Judgment instead of dodging it, even though dodging is the right thing to do normally, sometimes I'd put a shield up because I thought I was a clever warrior, and it would go through, and I was like, oh, I guess he had some skill that made it unblockable somehow.
Oh, that's pretty... I mean, the thing... it's kind of easy to miss because a lot of people just opt for the 3-round bursts a lot of the time, you know?
Yeah.
And that's enough. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, there you go. Okay, good to know. Lotus Strike, the number of poison stacks the skill grants has been increased from 1 to 2, and its duration has been reduced from 6 to 5.
Okay.
I don't know how much that changes anything.
Well, yeah, I mean that's really nice. Well, so it's a DP buff. It's good for dagger, right? But the thing is, going up slightly on the intensity of poison, it's still going to get cleansed when you're in the same... I don't know. I think that should have been different Condi. That should have been something... I mean, the only Condi it could be really would be like Vuln.
Like, is it really a DP buff, though? Because you only care about... As a DP, you only care about the duration of the poison, not
exactly, right. Which is what I was getting at. On paper, it would seem... Yeah, on paper, it would seem, oh, it's good to have more there on dagger because everybody's on sword main hand a lot. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Condi
it seems that it's maybe it's more of a DD buff.
Oh God, please don't.
Anyway, okay, then we have this one really got me. It messed me up in the head a little bit. I didn't understand why they did this. Well, anyway. Vault. The damage of this attack will no longer occur if the thief shadow steps after the skill has begun.
How does that work? I don't understand. Vault is the ground targeted staff 5, isn't it?
Yeah, and a lot of people have been shadow stepping or stealing or whatever after using the Vault attack, so that they land directly on the person. But they're saying that the damage no longer actually occurs if you shadow step like this in this way.
Well, see, in my brain, I feel like that's what should happen. Shouldn't it cancel cast it?
No. Shadow step never cancel casts anything.
If I imagine that I was an engineer in the middle of a jump shot and I somehow got TP'd in the middle of it, I would expect the second half of the jump shot to poof. I would expect it to not work. That would be my intuitive understanding of the engine.
I think, you know what I think it is? I think it's two warring philosophies here. Number one, if you're using your Vault and shadow stepping to somebody to try to surprise them with a Vault that they didn't think was going to land, which a lot of staff thieves have been doing, it was a lot of fun and really cool for the staff thief. But if you're shadow stepping to the target because you want to go invisible and then do some sort of invisible attack on them afterwards because you're stealing into them, and the Vault does damage, then that's bad for them, I guess, and they want to make it so that it's a little more intuitive, though. But that doesn't make any sense because you just wouldn't steal if you're trying to be stealthy. You would steal before the Vault or after the Vault if you're trying to be stealthy after it. You wouldn't do it during.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying. I feel a bit out of the loop, to be honest, about out of my depth. Maybe people can...
I feel like I'm a little bit out of my depth too, but I just feel like this was a bad change for staff thieves.
Well, we'll look to the internet and see what they have to say. To those out there, what do you make of the change, guys?
Next, we got Hide in Shadows, and this skill's description has been updated, just like the other heal skills in the game, to clarify that it removes conditions before it heals. Same thing with Withdraw. And then Ankle Shots.
Oh, hello.
This trait now... Yeah, you remember that skill trait. This trait now grants baseline 5% damage to crippled enemies and an additional 5% damage if the thief is wielding a pistol rather than 10% just if you have a pistol. So it's giving that, that whole
half and half,
thing,
yeah.
Half and half. The thing, there's a lot... In Thief and Warrior coming up later, there's a lot of these half and half things that I just don't think are that worth it.
Not worth the time to implement, you mean?
Not really, no. Like, how many people are going to pick up Ankle Shots just for a 5% increase in damage?
There might be some fringe scenario that they're just covering for in the future.
Maybe. Like, I would get it if the additional effects did a lot of things for people who didn't wield pistols also, or like half the things, but they don't have that in a lot of these cases. So, but anyway, then we have the chance to cripple a foe upon landing a critical hit with a pistol is now 100%. So that's again still with a pistol. And the tooltip regarding this trait's chance to critically hit has been removed. So yeah, it's basically all they did was you cripple more often when you're using a pistol, but they just split it 5 and 5. No additional effects. You just get 5% extra damage to crippled enemies.
Okay.
When you're not wielding a pistol.
Yeah,
then dagger train. Yeah, it's like whatever. Dagger training. This trait no longer grants an additional 5% when wielding a dagger. Instead, it now grants a baseline power of 80 and an additional 80 power when a thief is wielding a dagger. Again, very underwhelming for me.
Yeah. They're just so. I mean, I don't disagree with them. They're just there to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like whatever. And also, 80 power is very different from 5% damage.
Well, no, it's the 160 together.
Yeah, still, that's different though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, well, yeah. It depends on how much power you have to begin with, whether or not it's a buff or a... lead attacks. The duration of this trait's lead attacks stacking effect has been reduced from 15 seconds to 10 seconds. So it's already a nerf to lead attacks, just that the duration of those stacks is lower now.
Yeah.
And then it now also additionally requires the player to be in combat in order to generate the stacking damage effect. Some initiative skills that cause the player to enter combat will generate stacks.
Oh, that last bit's nice. At least there's that, right?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
if I open with a cloak and dagger, I get my full value's worth of lead attacks on that exact cloak and dagger, right? If you didn't with that would have felt really bad, and I can imagine all the posts about it instantly. So it's good the devs saw that already and headed that off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there you go. Lead attacks. We'll see how that goes out damage-wise for people if they enjoy it or not.
Boots. Yeah. Next we have your favorite heal. Whenever I see this heal, I think of you. I'm like, Boots likes that heal.
Well, yeah, it's because when it first came out, it was just such low healing that I was like, this is a great heal if it actually healed you. And then they buffed it to double the healing because it made sense. And now it transfers the condition before it heals, like all those other heals, and that's great.
Okay, so poison counter, here we come.
Exactly. And then finally, well, not finally, Silent Scope, though, no longer grants an additional 20% chance to critically hit with kneeling rifle skills and Death Judgment. It now grants up to 120 precision regardless of the weapon the thief wields, and an additional 120 precision when wielding a rifle.
What does that work out to? Is 240 20%?
No. 240 is a little bit over 10%.
Oh, so they're like half the strength of that.
Yeah, but they don't specify that you have to be kneeling now, at least.
Oh, yeah, no, that's true, I guess.
So Silent Scope is a buff to all rifle, but it's overall nerf, though, because it's down to 10% basically instead of 12% actually instead of 20%.
I wonder how that affects like running Valkyrie and stuff. Okay.
Yeah, at least the dodge stealth is still on there.
Yeah.
I hope.
Well, I mean, you can still pick up auto crit from stealth, so.
Yeah, exactly.
And intelligence sigil, or what's it called now? Vision sigil is like super power crept in PvE, so.
Oh yeah,
it's like
that's
permanent crit now, isn't it, for 3 seconds?
Yeah, it's pretty great. Staff Master, this trait now grants 5% damage when the endurance is not full, which increases to 10% while wielding a staff.
Okay.
So normal. Swindler's Equilibrium, this one is a big change actually. The cooldown of this trait has been reduced from 20 seconds, which was 30 seconds in all competitive game modes, is now down to 10 seconds in all game modes.
This is interesting. So what are they doing with it?
It now reduces the cooldown of steel by 50% in PvE and 25% in competitive game modes instead of 100% and 50%.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. All right.
Yeah. So actually, it basically works out the same for PvE, but for PvP it is, and PvP in World vs. World it is a buff because they're reducing the cooldown by twice over, 10 seconds from 30, and they're only reducing the recharge reduction by half.
Interesting. So that's gone from double steals to half, and now it's only 25% in competitive. That's really interesting.
But it's more. I think it might be good for
people.
But
it comes back more frequently, yeah.
Exactly. I think overall it's good for people.
It's just relying on dodging a little bit more.
Yeah, and it honestly, it's like how often do you like having a 100% steel recharge when you only had 10 seconds left on the recharge, rather than constantly getting more recharge?
Oh, you're saying because it's more incremental, you're not gonna go into a surplus too much, right?
Exactly.
That makes sense. What's this last bit here about the trait no longer increases damage?
Yeah, so the trait no longer increases damage by percentage and instead grants 120 power and 120 power if you're wielding a sword.
Oh,
I think
right,
it was
okay.
10% damage before.
There's been so many of those on Thief, actually.
Yeah, I know.
They're just
I
loaded
know.
up there. Okay.
And even more on Warrior. Anyway, that's it.
So you really had the pick of the litter for those ones then this week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting about changing all of these 10% modifiers to base powers, base powers and base condi powers, because it means that to get full effect of it, you don't need to build into that particular stat to begin with.
Do you think overall they're trying to get away from as many percentile modifiers as possible? Do you think eventually we'll see even really big ones like Executioner for the Thief? Eventually that will just be power.
Maybe, but
just
they literally
raw stats.
Maybe, but the patch before this, they literally just added like 5 more % modifiers to the runes, like 10% health modifiers.
Yeah, maybe they think that should be a rune thing, and I don't know. It's interesting.
Anyway.
Okay, so I've got a pick of either Ranger or Mesmer. And since we just did a medium armor, I'll save Ranger for last. Let's do Mesmer next. And Mesmer, as always, there's stuff to talk about, all right?
Of course.
To do with the signets. So Signal of Inspiration, round 3, Electric Boogaloo, whatever. We're going this is like the 5th iteration. Are you ready for it? Here we go. In this update, we've made changes to Signal of Inspiration and Mimic, 2 core skills in the current skill rotation for Chronomancers in raids.
Right.
These are fairly significant changes with slightly different purposes, although both have been made to address the issue of stacking power multipliers. The change to Mimic prevents it from being reset by the Chronomancer's Continuum Split skill. This is intended to prevent multiplicative power in the Mesmer's kit. We want Mimic to be a skill that allows for unique flexibility in Mesmer builds, but its double casting function created multiplicative power when combined with Continuum Split.
That's the design of Continuum Split.
This change also gave us the opportunity to give Mimic a scaling recharge time in order to make it more versatile for general play. So that might not make sense to you guys just yet. They'll describe them full in a second. And for what it's worth, I actually think that there's a kind of a mechanical thing they're playing with here. We might see on an upcoming Elite spec, maybe, and they've realized it would be good for some of the current stuff. I don't know. I'm always wondering about that on these patch notes. What we're seeing sneak in early. Instead of the Mesmer sharing its own active boons with allies, we've changed Signal of Inspiration to extend the duration of boons that are already on allies.
Interesting.
This is intended to put more emphasis on the Signet as a skill that augments other support skills, rather than one that support skills feed into.
Huh.
Neither of these changes are intended to alter the Chronomancer's identity as a build focused around quickness and alacrity. However, the power these 2 skills allowed Chronomancers made them a one-stop shop for every boon in the game, which was crowding out other potential roles in raid compositions.
That is...
In order to reinforce this direction, we've also added quickness and alacrity enhancements to the Chronomancer's wells. On a separate note, we've also reduced the power of Mirages in PvP in order to lower their burst damage. We want Mirages to excel in longer combat engagements, but their burst damage was just too high.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm saying 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10 with everything that they state there.
Same thing here. The only thing that's not a 10 out of 10 for me is the change to Mimic with Continuum Split, because I understand it's going to be an issue of the ends justify the means for me, for them, but I feel like the whole point of Continuum Split is to do these crazy double casting things.
Yeah, I can totally see why your disposition is to like that kind of really special kind of techie interaction. and that you
Yeah.
thrive on that with the build craft and stuff. But I think the game's probably healthier with the more simplistic and ironed out approach. So we'll see exactly what they do with Mimic in a second here, guys. But yeah, just in general, I love what the devs have said. I think it's very hard to argue with their philosophy there, isn't it? In terms of, I mean, the only thing I think that we lose now is it's less interesting as a skill. It's basically just a sand squall now. Welcome, Mesmers. You've become what Tempests were doing way back when Heart of Thorns first came out with their Warhorns. It's just
This is pretty huge, actually.
take the boons and refresh them. So the idea is the Chrono can selfishly have all their different ways of getting their resistance on themselves through their runes and X and Y and Z and their easy stab on their shatters and their easy quickness, but they won't be able to share all of their own wide range out. If you want a wide range of stab on everyone, you need, I don't know, a Guardian that has 10 target stab to first apply it, then you bounce it afterwards, right? Which means the Guardian has his role, and the Mesmer is there to consolidate that and empower that afterwards. But you cannot do it without the Guardian in the first place, and he gets his.
What's interesting about this change the Signet of Inspiration?
What's that?
Is that it's a very subtle nerf to its functionality. Besides the fact that obviously it's a nerf because it doesn't give every boon that you have. It's also a nerf to the amount of quickness and alacrity you're giving people.
Which is why they've buffed the Wells baseline, as they said, right?
Okay. Because 5 seconds of increased duration is less than the 6 seconds. With
Well,
100%
let's not jump ahead. Let's get to it in order, right? So,
right.
The start of the patch notes here, we got Axes of Symmetry. We're on the Mirage stuff. Physical damage of the skill has been split between game modes and reduced by about 30% only in PvP. Was the flat damage a big deal on Axes of Symmetry? I don't think so. I think that the evade frame needed to be shuffled down. I think the cooldown needed to go up a bit. They're always so scared. It's not lazy to increase cooldowns, guys. It's often the smartest thing to do. Yeah, I don't know. The physical damage, lingering thoughts. This is the Axe 2. The ammunition recharge time of the skill has been split in game modes, and it's been increased by 2 seconds in PvP only. So now they're doing a cooldown thing. My suggestion for this, I do actually want to nerf the lingering thoughts, but what I want is the cripple removed from lingering thoughts. You can still do.
Is that the only 2 changes?
No, they changed Jawn and they changed one of the ambushes. We'll get to it in a second. But for Axe, I think that Lingering Thoughts shouldn't apply Cripple. If you want the Cripple, you've got Cry of Frustration when it's traded. It's there anyway. You've got it on the build. It shouldn't provide its own win condition. It shouldn't provide its own cover condi as it does there. Anyway, they went with 2 seconds longer cooldown. Next, they've got Chrono Shield 5, Tides of Time. Fixed a bug in which the skill could strike multiple foes at the same time per wave. I thought, so that's, the shield can hit you on the way out over and over and over again. I guess this is similar to, like, Phoenix, like, suddenly hitting 9 times because you're on a slope or something. That would be my guess. I'm not 100% sure. Next, you've got Chaos Vortex. So this is the Staff Ambush. People are running since Infinite Horizon is meta, since the Elusive Mind nerfs. The might granted by the ambush has been changed from 3 stacks over 8 seconds to 2 for 15. Which is a substantial nerf. Slightly less potency, and it's more likely to get ripped and ruined before you get the full duration value out of it. Next, also Jaunt. The number of charges the skill can hold has been split. And while you still get 3 charges in PvE, it's gone down to 2 in PvP and World vs. World. And that's a brilliant change. I think that's really good. Jaunt's a lovely skill, and I really like the idea of it, guys. But I think dropping that to 2, you have to be conservative and precise about when you use it. You still get all your little tricks with fun stomps and stuff like that. You can still use it to apply extra pressure and burst, but if you're going for that, there is a risk to it now, and you're not just flitting around too much. That reins in mobility. That does so many good things. I like that a lot. Next, Signet of Humility. I'm not sure I like this. The Defiance bar damage performed by this skill has been reduced from 10 seconds worth to 6 seconds to match the duration of the skill's transformation. I don't think I like this. Signet of Humility is a massive amount of break bar damage because it is the CC skill. It is the ultimate. The only thing that comes close is Engineers tossing an AoE version of it, which is really short duration. Turning someone into a mower is like the god's CC. And so it should do the big break bar.
Well, it still does quite a bit.
Yeah, but now it's... I mean, I might be reading this wrong, but now it's what's the difference between this and Gravity Well at the moment? Isn't it just going to straight up be use Gravity Well? It's the lower cooldown, more frequently accessible, blah, blah, blah. I'm not 100% sure on the CC mechanics here in raids, but I feel like that's a bit lame. I don't think that it's CC... I always felt like its CC breakbar damage was a little bit over, just the amount of time it was, because it was, such an iconic CC. But they have it, so they've nerfed that down. Maybe that's for the best, and I'm missing a part of the story. All right, now Signet of Inspiration. The active effect of this Signet no longer shares the Mesmer's boons with allies. Instead, it extends the duration of all allies' current boons by 5 seconds. So the patch notes don't describe how this interacts with the new trait, but we can assume that without the trait, it does it on 5 people. With the trait, it does it on all 10. Basically, this is a 10-man sand squall for my Tempest friends out there that goes for 5 seconds, not just 2. Next, we've got Signet of Midnight. So this Signet's passive effect now grants 180 expertise instead of 10% flat condition duration in order to be consistent with other Signet effects. Again, that's a nerf, isn't it? Slightly 180 expertise. Is that less than 10? No, that is 10%, isn't it? 180 is 10%.
Isn't 15 expertise 1%? So it's a bit more than 10%?
Oh, well, there you go. So anyway, we've seen that several times in this release. Mimic. So here's how Mimic now works. This skill's recharge time has been reduced from 75 seconds all the way down to 40, which is good. But now, the recharge time is increased by the recharge time of the utility skill that it's affecting. The recharge time of this skill cannot be reset by other Mesmer skills. So they just hackily say, no continuum split, basically. But yeah, they're basically saying that if you mimic something with a really short cooldown, Mimic doesn't get, punished much because it's just you're just spending that cooldown again that you actually paid for.
So hold on, it says it specifies that it's increased by the recharge time of the utility skill.
It changes based on what utility you go for.
But it's that amount as well.
Yeah.
So let's say Signet of Inspiration, let's say it's a 30-second recharge time. It's now a 70-second recharge time for your Mimic because it's 40 plus 30, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting from it, yeah.
So already, before they're saying that you can't use Continuum Split with it, they could make this so that it's a nerf to Mimic, but on top of the nerf to Mimic, they are increasing they're making it so that you can't Continuum Split it.
Right.
So it's like a double nerf.
If you want to read it that way, I guess, yeah. I mean, I think that they're trying... Mimic's kind of frustrating in the way it's utilized in raid scenarios and when people are grouped up in that way isn't probably what they originally imagined when they had it for the game. I've also been wondering about mimicking portals and whether this is going to get... I mean, it will still be viable, right? And it will still be a thing. It's just that it's going to be much more frustrating to reset because you're going to have a hell of a Mimic cooldown that you have to sit and wait on now. What's the longest cooldown you can actually Mimic now, and you'd have to wait for the full thing? Like, that's going to be very, very, very lengthy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the way they've done that. How that hooks into rotations with Signet of Inspiration,
We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out as always. Next, you got Portal. This was actually really interesting to me, and I think will be a subject of a lot of discussion. It amazes me the devs never talked about it in the forward. Portal. The duration of time the Mesmer has to place the portal exit has been split between game modes. The duration's reduced from 60 to 30 in both PvP and World versus World, but remains unchanged in PvE. So, the cooldown of Portal is still the same. You can still Portal just as frequently as you used to. However, the period of time where you can leave your Portal and know that you have that tether coming back is being cut in half.
Yikes.
That's a big nerf to Portal, I think. A significant nerf.
PvP for sure.
And that's a pretty fundamental dynamic. My opinion of Mesmer as far as competitive modes has always been is I actually hate it. I hate it in terms of spectating. I hate the way it clutters the screen and it spams stuff out. I think it's gross. And I'm okay with Mesmer in general being a very underpowered class just because it will always be meta as long as it has Portal, as Portal existed, right? So you can have it be underpowered and make sure it's only genuinely really good people on the class, and there you have it. And, genuinely high-rated, decent environments that are utilizing Mesmers. And I was okay to relegate myself as a Mesmer fan and all others to that fate. But, the devs here are taking a direct pot shot at Portal itself and saying, no, that's not the world we're going to live in. We're going to have these OP Mesmers running around, and we're not going to have it all hinge on Portal. So there you have it.
Portal. I don't know if this is gonna get rid. This is not gonna get rid of Portal from PvP. People are still gonna be running Portal, of course, but it does bring in the real threat of placing a portal down on a point and not going back to it before somebody goes to it.
Yeah, I mean, it depends whether you're using them aggressively or defensively. One thing that this does strike me is I'm always if I'm fighting a Mesmer, defending my node, he portals and walks off. I nearly always follow. I hate standing around on a portal waiting to see if he comes back through to prevent the decap again. I hate doing that. I always keep moving. However, now I only have to wait 30 seconds, not a full minute. So that's actually going to change my psychology now, and maybe I will just sit it out and think, no, you know what, I'll wait the 30 seconds. That's not a problem. I'll deny the value of this utility skill. Oh, well, it's not really, because then he's denying me from the rest of the map. But, there's a dynamic shift there. So I like the change.
It takes 15 seconds probably for Mesmer to get from a point they put something down on to another point. So it's like...
It's depending on what they've got, whether they're sword ambushing around and stuff, definitely. But yeah, that, and what map you're on.
So how much are you actually going to affect the fight on another point before
there's a lot more support? I mean, obviously when we're talking about team scenarios and we're trading people in and out of team fights to create favorable matchups and stuff like that, there's so much you can do with it. So you're right with your original statement. I think it's not going anywhere because of this, but that's a substantial change, I think, at least looking at it, my first impression. Now we get to the wells. So we already kind of know this. Quickness and alacrity have kind of gone down a bit because Signet of Inspiration is now just a flat 5, and before you were getting a bit more so here, check it out. The duration of quickness on the final pulse of the Well of Action has been increased from 4 to 5 seconds, which remember is doubled with all your concentration. And the Well of Recall, the duration of alacrity that the final pulse of this applies, has been increased from 4 to 5 seconds. The casting time for that also, by the way, has gone down by 1/4 of a second. So that's all easy. Okay. Continuum Split. They fixed a bug in which the Rift object that is created by the skill could fail to be destroyed when the Resign command was used. So I wonder where people were cheesing that. So you would Continuum Split / Resign, stand back up with all your cooldowns up, and then teleport somewhere, and that could do something, maybe?
Maybe.
I'm not sure. I'm probably showing my ignorance there of some very well-known PvE exploit that I've just not been aware of. Bountiful Disillusionment. This trait now only applies to the Mesmer. So this is pretty big, right?
Yeah, that's the one that I was looking at.
So Bountiful Disillusionment was when you shatter, give yourself stability plus another boon, right? So you would use this to spread resistance and stuff out before, right? Because and stability out, because if you entered Continuum Split, you'd give yourself stab and resistance. But was this AoE before? It was everyone around you, and now they're saying they don't want that, so you can't signet it anyway. Is that the idea?
I guess so. Yeah.
So yeah, that's now only for you.
Yeah.
And then that means basically you can still do it as a chrono. You could definitely run like the mantra of concentration. That spreads AoE stab out. I'm sure it does. And you can still do certain things, but not 10-man, not as well as others. Let the dedicated other boon builds do those, and you're dedicated for the quickness and the alacrity. Create these niches for people. I like that idea. A totally different topic. There's 2 things for Chrono here that I think is quite fun. First of all, Danger Time. This trait's effect now applies to illusions. So Danger Time is you get higher crit chance against slowed things. Well, now so do your Phantasms. So if you're running like any Phantasm pressure build, which a lot of Chronos do because Chrono Phantasma, they now hit harder, they crit harder. And also Lost Time has changed. So Lost Time was every time you crit, you kept ticking up a buff, and when you got the 5th tick, you did damage and slowed. And then you went tick, tick, tick. It was really good on greatsword builds because you just go beam, 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 beam. And you were rolling all these little B cuts and it would go lost time, lost time, lost time, lost time, lost time.
Yeah.
Well, so now they've changed it. This trait now delivers its slowing strike when the Mesmer disables their target, instead of after the Mesmer's been building charges. Its base strike damage has been reduced by 50%, but its critical hit damage has been increased by 100. So,
but again, that's a nerf.
So this is like Electric Discharge in that it's still allowed to crit, and Static Discharge in that it's still allowed to crit, but it's still kind of nerfed. Also, the regularity of how frequently it procs, if it's only when you disable your target now, it's like way worse, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Shouldn't they up the damage enormously with that?
Apparently not.
Unless we're doing the maths wrong and that 100% in damage increase really is a really cool thing. I don't know.
Well,
the other thing...
even if the 100% damage increase was not plus 100% but actually double, it would still be a nerf, because if you don't crit, you don't crit.
The other thing about this to me is we already have Power Block, which is do a strike of damage when you interrupt, right? Which is basically... do a strike of damage when you disable something. Does disable count as cripples and things? Maybe that's a difference. Maybe it's every time you cripple, but that would be bonkers. What when I summon my GS
I don't think it does count.
So yeah, I mean now it's too close to Power Block. It feels. I mean you could take both, and there's some fun ideas there. I don't know. Anyway, Mirror of Anguish. So this they talked about way at the start of the video. So this was the trait that meant if Boots used a blowout on me, he automatically got blown out backwards. If he knocked me down, he also got knocked down. If he floated me, he also got floated. Well, this trait has now been renamed to Auspicious Anguish. Good Guild Wars 1E referencey thing there, the auspicious skills. It now causes the skill Distortion. Oh yeah, this one was crazy, Boots. It now causes Distortion to instant recharge when the Mesmer is affected by a CC. It also causes the distortion effect to grant random boons when it ends. And the cooldown is 50 seconds. So, you know, like double stealing thieves? Like Mesmers get their version of that now. You get double distorting Mesmers. Here's the
But hold on a second.
Here's the thing. I totally get what the devs are going for. The idea is the old trait was you got CC'd and then passively reimbursed it. Well, they still want that flavor of you being able to respond to a CC. So what they're doing instead is they're saying, all right, if you get CC'd, you get your distortion back for free, but you have to have the smarts to quickly press it. And you have to
they're making distortion better. The thing is, though, it's like they've removed Elixir S from
but that was pure passive. That was pure that
was fine. That was pure passive, but it's not that much different. Like, it's not that hard to press distortion when you get knocked down.
Also, the Elixir S has a set duration that was really quite long. Distortion,
it's 3 or 4 seconds. Or
something if you have a max value shatter,
could be 4 seconds. But they're also increasing the ability of distortion. Like, they're getting boons at the end of it too, and it's a much lower cooldown with 50 seconds.
I don't think they're as comparable as you think they are. However, I would say it did seem very strong, and that was something that struck me.
It is very strong. Yeah, I kind of want to play this with a Mirage with that master trait in the top master trait.
Can we still roll out lots of mini packets of distortion as well through signets and domination and stuff? So I wonder how those random boons feel.
Right there.
Is it pure random, like Sigil of Luck, maybe, and we have no idea what we'll get or what? But yeah, so what a crazy change, eh? Mirror of Anguish right there. That's not even GM, I don't think. Next.
I like it now.
Last but not least, for the Mesmer, we've got Power Block. The damage of the skill has been increased by 20%, so it now matches its tooltip. The trait can't crit anymore.
This is another one where I'm not too keen on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, you think that one should have been still allowed to crit?
Yeah, it's a power line.
I love Power Block for what it's worth. One of my favorite Mesmer builds I ever played was a Power Block oriented Shatter build from way back when it was admittedly bugged to interact way too heavily with Chaos Storm, but it was so fun. And I saw some people still run Power Block, and the increased recharge cooldowns and stuff is fun, but I do miss the damage on it. So there you go. That's Mesmer.
Okay,
that's the whole lot.
Very
and they
cool.
got a really good splash there, I think, of core stuff, Chrono and Mirage. They hit the raiding scene very well. They hit the PvP scene very well. They got some wild cards in there. All around, this is probably my favorite section, just in terms of like variety of stuff. So there you go. All right.
I'm trying to think. Like, what would I prefer more to happen to one of those traits? Would I prefer if I'm a crit damage power build? Would I prefer it to have no longer crits foes but does a little bit more damage, or would I prefer it to have 100% extra damage increase but half base damage? I think I would prefer. I don't know. I think I would prefer the not be able to crit anymore, because I feel like the having the base damage basically makes it that crits are just like normal hits now.
Yeah, in a sense, yeah. Well, what they're doing there is they're pigeonholing and saying, look, we like this existing, but we don't want this existing unless you are playing glassy. Yeah. And maybe that's okay.
I guess so. Anyway, all right, moving on to my final
your
guy,
final
which
one?
is
this is
which is Warrior.
Warrior, you got to give me something amazing to excite me. Right now, Boots, you have excited me into playing a new Revenant build.
Have I?
Yeah.
Even though you were the one who read that.
Yeah, but we did the maths together, so I'm crediting you, right? So
Okay.
you've done that. Now you've got to excite me with Warrior, okay?
I'm afraid I don't think I have the ability to do that here.
Oh.
There is a little buff here and there, but yeah, anyway, here we go. Warrior. Its full counter has functionally different uses in competitive game modes when compared to PvE. Yes, this is true. So we further split this skill between game modes in order to emphasize this difference. We also cleaned up several weapon traits that were not included in the last update. Lastly, many warrior weapon traits are now offer enhancements regardless of the weapon, while providing additional bonuses when using a specific weapon.
All right, I am a bit on edge because full counter is kind of a big thing to me, and
yeah,
I'm
so
really...
It is a big thing. So they say that we wanted to emphasize the difference between PvE and competitive game modes for full counter. So what we did was we reduced the damage on competitive game modes to 25% of PvE.
Wait. The damage applied by this skill in competitive modes has been reduced from 75% of PvE to 25% of PvE.
But they did increase the day's duration to 1.5 seconds instead of like a quarter of a second or whatever it was.
I'm going to get some haters here. I really am. But I kind of hate full counter, and I think it's a bit too easy. I think it's a bit brain dead, and I think I actually kind of like that. Warrior, I'm going to get some real haters here of Warrior.
No,
names.
I kind of agree with you, man. I full counter as an entire elite spec is the full counter.
It depends where I'm fighting the warrior, because full counter is super trash on the Z axis. So if you're kiting properly, like up and down things, if those are opportunities, full counter, like I really couldn't care less how much damage it does. But in other situations, it does feel too cheesy. Sometimes this is a tether that's a bit more frustrating. There's some cool counter play with it though. Like I do like stowing and making sure not to proc it, but trying to bait them into using it. And I don't know about this.
No, that's it. I like full counter. In the getting to have full counter on a warrior is great. I love using it. However, thematically, it's not so different. All it basically does is make Spellbreaker make it so that a normal core warrior is more defensive, so that they could use different things that they'd usually not be able to use because it wasn't defensive enough.
Yeah, you feel hamstrung without it, kind of thing.
Yeah, so
but 25% boots? That's so low.
It's very low, but it increases the day's duration up to 1.5 seconds. So I guess what it's doing is it's just making it so that it's not a damaging skill anymore in PvE. It's just a CC skill.
No. In PvP, you mean?
Sorry, in PvP, yeah. So it's a CC skill rather than a damaging skill. And in PvE, you don't really care about the length of your dazes.
I think that's fitting. I think that's fair for the. You sounded cynical about that, but I think the devs are pretty on nailed.
Pretty accurate, but I would have said buff the damage in PvE in that case rather than just leave it the same. They're selling a nerf to full counter as
a buff to PvE,
as a buff, as a changing of the meaning.
Fair
of
enough.
PvE versus
Fair
PvP.
enough. I see the cynicism in that, definitely.
Yeah. Although, you know what? I'm not gonna say that a 1.5 second daze isn't cool. It's cool.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good. It's fine. So then mending, this skill's description has been updated to clarify that it removes conditions instead of heals.
Before it heals. Yeah, instead of heals.
Yeah.
Well,
Before it is. Good point. Sorry, I misread that.
dude, I like that. I've been
S-
running a Mending build. I seriously have.
yeah, mending
Unironically.
is kind of strong now. Now that it's not
The
very
cooldown is
strong,
so
but
low
it's
as a physical. It's just
exactly
like ding, 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 heal, 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 heal.
exactly.
Cleanse, cleanse,
Yeah,
cleanse, cleanse.
yeah, and it's a shame though because as a physical, you're gonna want to take that physical trait that reduces the cooldown of it, right? But right above it is that every time you use a healing skill, you get 5 stacks of might, and like there's no point of running that when you have this. Mending is the only heal skill that warriors get that make that 5 stacks of might when you use a heal skill would be okay on because it's a 12-second cooldown with the trait, but you can't take it because you have to take that trait.
Right, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, then we got Scorched Earth. The burning duration of the skill has been reduced from 5 seconds to 4 seconds.
Why are they nerfing?
That is, I don't know.
Why?
That's pretty huge for
Berserker.
Condi warriors.
What
Yeah.
the hell?
I don't know. Why are they doing that? Are Condi berserkers too strong?
Don't ask me. Well, certainly not in the competitive formats. I didn't think so.
No.
Not.
This would be for raiding, and that's not great for Condi warriors. Huh. Okay. Well, maybe they want to give power warriors a place again because with this next thing we have axe mastery. The amount of ferocity that okay, so this was written weird. The amount of ferocity that increases while wielding an axe has been reduced from a maximum of 300 to a maximum of 120, and I think they mean a different number there because warriors can now gain 120 ferocity for each axe they are wielding and gain 120 regardless of what weapon they are wielding.
So it's 240.
No, it is 360.
So you get
120 flat.
Yeah.
If you're not using any axes, you get an additional 120, so 240 if you're using one axe, and then if you're double wielding axes, you have 360 additional
I see.
ferocity.
So you get a little bit more ferocity from axe mastery in the end if you're getting both axes. I like that version of the trait.
Yeah, me too. Although it kind of makes me sad about I mean I'd be losing my 300 ferocity when I just have
the one axe.
My one axe in one hand and one axe in the other on the other set.
Yeah. Isn't that against like quite a nice other flat damage like bursty trait anyway as well? So why would you run the idea of splitting that for when you're not using any axes at all? I think the juxtapositions on there make that seem a bit unappetizing anyway, doesn't it?
I don't know. I'm actually kind of sad that I'm guessing raid scenarios where you're gonna go double axe now maybe to get that extra 60 ferocity. I don't like the way this trait has been changed because I really, really enjoyed having main hand axe, offhand something else, and then on my other set, main hand something, offhand
and then the
axe.
Yeah.
And constantly and doing discipline for quick swaps and having constantly 300 extra ferocity. It was great, but now that's changed.
Well, no, you still get the essence of it though, and that's what I quite like. That.
Yeah, I mean, you'll still have 240, which it's not so bad if you're using one axe.
Yeah, that's how I play PvE warrior actually.
Yeah,
swapping between daggers and the alternate hands.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, and then we got Blade Master, another one of these weapon things. The condition duration increase this trait grants for sword skills has been replaced with an increase of up to 120 condition damage while wielding a sword, and now grants 120 expertise regardless of whether you're wielding a sword.
Oh, okay. Is there a chance that some of these other changes justify the Scorched Earth nerf?
120 condition damage? No, I don't think so.
Well, I mean the list in the whole, the stuff we haven't seen yet.
Oh,
right?
and then Heat of the Soul, maybe? And then Forceful Greatsword. This trait no longer increases Greatsword and Spear damage by 10% and now grants 120 power and an additional 120 power if you're wielding a Greatsword or Spear.
Okay.
Also, another one of those whatevers. The problem with this one also is I would have loved to see that Might generation get split in some way between wielding a Greatsword and not wielding a Greatsword, but I don't know. I guess they can't do that.
Yeah.
Magebane Tethered. They have a little bit of a typo here on the notes.
Not the first one.
Not the first one, yeah. So, but it says duration of the might of this trait grants has been split between game modes, but really it's not the duration of might that really changes that much. It's more the stacks. It says it now applies 2 stacks for 6 seconds in PvP while keeping its current 8 stacks, but that's wrong. It's 3 stacks for 8 seconds rather than 8 stacks for 3 seconds in PvE in World vs. World. So the duration is down in PvP, but more importantly, the number of stacks is also down in PvP.
Yeah.
So that nice interaction that you have with Might Makes Right is now reduced.
A much needed nerf, perhaps, to Strength Warrior. I mean, what I think about there is in tandem with the full counter change as well at the same time. But it's still as accessible getting landing your tethers. And that was a very, very strong build. Damn.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's a little bit of nerf for PvP, but it looks like it doesn't really change in World vs. World and PvE. And then Merciless Hammer. This one is sad for me also. The part of this trait that inflicts confusion has been removed.
Yeah, that doesn't make me sad at all, because whenever I've looked at that, I've been like, I don't care about the confusion. Way back, I know that's like, it was a part of just all interrupts do confusion, wasn't it? That's what it used to be. Yeah. I remember one of my first ever duels with someone way back near release. He was running like maces with confusion on like lots of interrupts and
it got kind of interesting when Berserker came out and you had your mace with your skull grinder. Additional things, but now it's gone completely. Unfortunately,
the last vestiges have been. But the thing is, since it's been on Merciless Hammer, it's just not really worked, right? With where it is on the line and how I've never gone that deep.
I would take it even without using a hammer. But anyway, hammer skills now inflict increased damage on any disabled target, not just those who are dazed, knocked down, and launched stun. That's good because you have a lot of access to different types of knockouts that the hammer doesn't do.
Yeah.
And then this trait now grants adrenaline when the warrior disables a foe, regardless of the weapon the warrior wields. Oh. And that, I believe, is 10 adrenaline, which is with Berserker and Spellbreaker are both a full burst, right? So when you stun somebody, you got your burst ready.
That's really, really interesting. And you can use any number of mechanisms now to stun. It doesn't matter what's in your main. You just headbutt someone, you balls rush someone. It doesn't matter what's in your main hand. You're getting the value.
Yeah, and that, you know what that means. Okay, so you have 2 stacks of adrenaline for a Spellbreaker, right?
See, now this is interesting. They've split this is one of the weapon ones where they've split like a mechanic off,
exactly, and made a new.
And
it's not just
it's not just stats that are getting split around.
Yeah,
it's mechanics.
This is way better split,
Which is what we saw last patch as well, where they were splitting some mechanics around.
But honestly, what this does is it's only a damage increase for the hammer when things are knocked down and stunned and stuff. So while the other things incentivize actually playing the weapons, this one doesn't really make me feel strongly about playing a hammer.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. Anyway, so just to let you know, though, like with the Spellbreaker, with this trait, you have 2 stacks of adrenaline, two stages of adrenaline, and you have that trait, right? So you get your 2 stages, you use your burst skill, and then you have a stage left, so you use your full counter, which stuns somebody. You get 10 adrenaline back right away, and and because of that trait, your burst goes off a cooldown, and you could use it right away, right again.
Oh, I like it. Wow.
Yeah, works nicely.
That does sound very good.
Yeah, and then finally, Bloodlust. This one confuses me to no end. The base bleeding duration has been reduced. Actually, it doesn't confuse me right now because we talked about it. Has been reduced from 5 seconds to 3 seconds. And so Bloodlust is that minor trait that...
Arms, right?
In arms, where you get a 33% chance on crit, I think.
Yeah.
To inflict 5 seconds of bleeding, which is not that much. And it's anyway. And then so now it's down to 3 seconds. I suppose this is trying to counteract the fact that you get extra condition damage.
Well, this also increases the length of your bleeds, right? It both applies...
No, it
both splashes some bleeds out, but it also improves the length. It does both.
Right, yeah.
And the second of those hasn't actually changed, right? It's just...
Right, so this is just reducing the duration from 5 to 3 seconds, which... Was this trait dealing that much damage to things that it needed to be reduced like this?
Kind of goes in the par with the Scorched Earth change to me.
Yeah, kind of. Anyway, that's it for Warrior.
Well, that was actually really interesting. And again, seems quite volatile in some ways, actually. I know there'll be a lot of discussion out there with the full counter and the Mage Bane tether change, definitely. And, and the Condi changes.
And Scorched Earth.
Yeah. There will be all scores of warriors. And not really anything nice or wild as a treat for them. Really.
No, maybe the change to Merciless Hammer is kind of interesting.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Everything else is kind of like quasi interesting. I'm kind of worried about it.
All right. Well, we can end up here with saving not the least for last, saving the best for last. All right, the Ranger. Okay. I was trying to make it clear that we didn't leave Ranger for last because we dislike Ranger. It's just how it ended up.
I feel like we do that quite often, actually.
Do we leave Ranger last? I wanted to leave Mesmer last today because I'm intimidated about talking about Mesmer, as always. So, Ranger, right now, spirits are playing an important role in our difficult endgame content by providing unique enhancements. When a trait is equipped with... Wait, what? When a trait is equipped with Nature's Vengeance, that is what it says... When a ranger's equipped with Nature's Vengeance, spirits also serve as low-cost boon generators. In this update, we made select changes to Nature's Vengeance to reduce boon output and to clean up the trait. Now, that reducing of output, it's clear what they're doing. They want, specific professions to be doing specific kind of be well known for it. So they're refining these, I guess. Specifically, I think protection on Stone Spirit is something we might be looking at in a minute. Anyway, depending on how these changes work out, we may make further spirit adjustments in the future. Okay. I got kind of Guild Wars 1 nostalgia there. They used to say that all the time in their old balance patches. We're going to make future adjustments. Of course, back then it was like monthly. Additionally, Soul Beasts are currently overperforming in competitive game modes, so we're lowering the power of some of the skills used in their builds. We also took this opportunity to enhance a few of their weaker stances. So there's some pretty wild stuff here, I've got to say. Now, assuming the plasma thing from the start goes through, that is a nerf to Boon Beast straight away. But look at, and I like this. Call of the Wild is so strong, I think. And it's getting refined a little bit. This skill's Fury duration has been split between game modes. It's going to be 6 seconds in PvP. It will still be 10 in the other modes, but it's just 6 now.
Okay.
So then we get into the stances. You're going to see I exclaimed at something earlier, Boots, and you're going to hear it again in a second. So Bear Stance. This skill will now attempt to consume a condition before it heals. Thank you for the heal. Mower Stance. So this is the boon duration. This is like the crazy concentration. This is a staple of Boon Beast. And the cooldown of this skill has been increased from 25 seconds to 40. Ooh. So it's a big cooldown increase and a very necessary one. Moa got hit hard in the face, and I think it deserved to be. So yeah, wow. That's, they're not messing around when they say that Soul Beasts are overperforming. Boon Beasts are overperforming. There, they've hit it. Now look at this. Dolliac Stance, also a staple of Boon Beast. Well known for its 1vx potential, or its 1v1 capabilities, its sustain. This skill no longer applies retaliation, thank you, I guess. Instead, it now reduces incoming condition damage and physical damage by 33% for the duration of the stance, in addition to its other effects, which, by the way, were the extremely powerful boons. Oh, wait, I guess it's just stab now. I thought there was protection on it as well. Okay, so it's stab and massive damage shrug-off now. Wow. So they wanted to rain, and then they buffed one of the best.
And it prevents movement impeding conditions to be afflicted on you.
They buffed one of the best in slots. I don't get it. That's what I explained at.
That's pretty strong now.
That's reducing condi and physical damage. And don't forget this is on Soul Beast that gets to reduce those in other ways too.
It sounds like a must-pick utility skill now, for sure.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible on the Dolliac stance there. Griffin stance. So this is the evadey one. Gives you tons of endurance. People weren't really running as far as I know. This skill is no longer instant activation, but now evades for a second when you activate it, in addition to its current effects. Or at least that's just how I'm interpreting it here. So kind of an interesting skill there, in that it's like lots of dodging for you, really, because while that first evade is going off and you're comfortable, it's quickly, rapidly recharging some more for you, which you can then, double dodge into or whatever.
Okay, so hold on. Endurance regeneration. Okay, so that's the one that improves your endurance regeneration.
Yes, yeah. So that's the stances and a lot of the Boon Beast stuff. There'll be more Boon Beast things in a minute later with Axe main hand. Well, actually, a lot of Ranger builds are getting hit by that across the whole game.
Interesting too, though. It's like a Griffin Stance is kind of like a quasi stun break in some ways because it's instant activation. So you could probably use it when you're stunned.
It's not instant activation anymore.
Oh, it's not instant activation.
No, that's
anymore.
the
Oh,
change,
look at that.
and you
Yeah,
get
look at that.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right, so moving on. We've got spirit skills. So remember what the devs just said up there. First, they fixed a bug in which nature spirits could continually to apply their effects to allies after they were defeated. I never knew about that. There you go. It's fixed. The base health of spirits has also been increased by 25%.
Probably good.
So here's what they say. Frost Spirit. The name of the spirit summoned by the skill has been changed from Spirit of Frost to Frost Spirit to be consistent with the other Ranger spirit names.
Oh, thank goodness. That's been bugging me for 6 years.
It's never bugged me, but everyone loves talking about it. So there you go.
No, I didn't even know anybody was talking about it. I don't think I ever read the spirit name before.
Go team. The other one is Ice Bow is called Frost Bow, but the spell is called Ice Bow. There's a discrepancy between those two.
Gotta
That's another one.
Forms about that.
I hope you enjoy. Cannot unsee that one as well there, guys. All right, next. So they didn't change it given prot or anything, though, as you can see. And I'm going to skip down the patch notes here a little bit so that we stay with the spirit. Storm Spirit now grants Fury for a second instead of Swiftness for 3. Frost Spirit, this now grants Might for 5 seconds for 1 stack instead of 3 seconds for 3 stacks.
They worded that weird. And
yeah, they did.
You up.
Yeah, it tripped me up pretty bad. But yeah, so it's worded weird. Basically, there's a bit less might there now.
Is that in addition to? Oh yeah, so it's the trait. So it'll be in addition to the base.
Yeah. We're only talking about the trait boons. That's all that really they're changing.
Yeah.
Spirit, res. They fixed a bug in which the stability granted by the spirit hit fewer targets than intended.
Okay.
And then the heal, the regeneration duration that the spirit grants from the trait again has been reduced from 3 seconds to 2 seconds. Which is super minor as far as I'm concerned. So there you go. That's They talked a lot about the spirits in the forward, and then looking at the changes there, I'm not actually really sure.
It's not that big.
Yeah.
But you get Fury now instead of Swiftness, so
that is
maybe
a thing.
People run Storm Spirit in raids. I don't know.
You got Ambidexterity as well. So this was while you're wielding an offhand, you get extra. I think it was expertise. They fixed a bug in which the bonus stats that the trait granted could be incorrectly applied. So people found a way to game that and have it when they shouldn't. So next we got Soften the Fall. Fixed a bug in which muddy terrain that this trait creates could last much longer than it intended, than its 10-second duration. Now, I was a bit disappointed with this one, Boots, because Soften the Fall I actually think is a really important thing to nerf Rangers. I don't mind if Boon Beast and stuff is a great 1v1er, but I think in terms of like its kite potential, just being able to drop a hill and immob people around, climbing on boxes and things, being able to preemptively drop the immob to set people up for spikes and stuff, and there's a lot of really messy, it's just not a fun thing, and it lasts so long, and it's not just immob, it's like slow and cripple, and it's Condi cleanse for them as well because of the Grandmaster. It's kind of the same thing that Guardians have got going on when they take all the meditation stuff. There's just too much self-synergy there. And I was hoping to see something more. Again, I'm just an advocate for increasing the cooldowns on a lot of things. But the devs have just fixed some kind of weird interaction. Maybe later we'll see something with Soften the Fall. But that would be one of my big targets for that build, actually. Next, Wilderness Knowledge. The duration of Fury that the trait grants has been split, so you're only getting 4 seconds of Fury in PvP and World versus World instead of 6 in PvE. And then lastly, Winter's Bite. So this is the last thing, and I guess the last thing in the video, and it is actually quite a big thing. So this is Axe 3, and this is a skill that has been getting quite a bit stronger over the past year and a half. There hasn't actually been a buff for a while. So anyway, it's the Frost Explosion. Lots of damage, chill, but as you know, many Ranger skills, they do something for the Ranger, and then they also trigger something in your pet as well. For this skill, it's your next pet's attack will inflict weakness. And the nerf here is that the duration of weakness that the skill grants has been split. It's the same in PvE, but in World versus World, it's down to 4 seconds instead of 10. So the story here, 10 seconds of weakness. We've given a lot of numbers and a lot of durations and a lot of stuff over today's video.
So before it was 10 seconds of weakness. Wow.
Well, and it still is in PvP and World vs. World. Weakness is a powerful condi. 10 seconds is an extremely long duration. So I'm happy with that. But the other thing that's really gross about Axe, just in general, is once you cast the Axe 3 and you put that buff on your pet that says it will inflict weakness, that will never go away. You can blind the pet, you can have Aegis on you, you can dodge roll away from the pet, you can kite the pet for an hour. Eventually it will catch up to you, and let's face it, it's going to be like an owl or something that's constantly just pecking away at your face, and they're going to give it super speed and stuff, and they're going to cast sick 'em and whatnot. It's going to hit you eventually, and it will do the weakness. It doesn't like go away, which is what I would have wanted the nerf to be. If you dodge the pet's next attack, you should avoid the weakness. Then there's counterplay involved. But no. So anyway, that's why it's so strong. It was just like an unavoidable 10 seconds of weakness that could totally screw you if you're trying to get a quick kill on one of these.
So they didn't change the fact that it's unavoidable.
No, they didn't. That's what I would have wanted them to do. But now it's only 4 seconds, so you can outweight it, I guess. Ranger's always been annoying with that, because they have that trait as well that gives automatic weakness when they get attacked in melee and stuff. I don't know. There's a lot about Ranger that's just very passive and kind of... I bet a lot of Rangers, and there's no shame in it, guys, use Axe all the time, and you didn't even know that it was buffing your pet. Don't worry. Just Ranger things. So there you have it. That's the last of the classes.
So that's it. That was, I mean, as a birthday present, wasn't balance ever. Anytime balance comes, it's a nice present.
Dude,
so,
it just blew my. You just blew my mind. This is our longest balance for boots ever. We just spent over 3 hours on this.
Holy shit!
And I've realized you just spent 3 hours of your birthday doing this. I feel bad. I can't believe you just spent 3. Was it a fun part of your birthday? I feel like I've drained your time. Everybody needs to give you a big round of applause. And the worst thing is we're not even going to have footage for this one. I hope people enjoyed the podcast. It's been great having your company, Boots. Did you get anything good for your birthday, by the way? Or are you at that point where no one's bothering anymore?
Not yet. I'm going to probably get some gifts when I go back for the holidays.
Oh, yeah, because you're near Christmas.
Yeah.
Ugh,
yeah, but I'm going out to a very, very nice dinner tonight with Leah.
Ooh, very posh. That sounds lovely. Well, thank you, guys. Give Boots all his best and a happy birthday down in the comments. And let us know what you think about all the little things maybe we had niggling criticisms on, or some gaps you want to fill in. I'll be watching the comments eagerly as ever. And we'll have Boots back for more balance when the devs give it. Cheers, guys. See you next time. Bye.